Dealing with poor people is such a waste of time. I'll only bother with you if I have time left over, Michael said, laughing and waving us away like we didn't matter. Even I, who usually tries to be kind to others, had reached my breaking point. Then, my son, who had been listening to the conversation, said loudly enough for Michael to hear, "I wonder if I withdraw the 1 billion yen I have deposited, will that shut this place down?" Hi, I'm Susan Parker, a 67-year-old housewife. Lately, my husband George and I have been enjoying relaxing afternoons at cafes. George is 2 years younger than me and has recently retired. Since I've been so focused on work for most of my life, I now find myself unsure of how to spend my free time, so I decided to take my husband out to explore different shops and cafes. We both love coffee, and we've always wanted to visit various cafes. George didn't mind my idea of going on a cafe tour and, in fact, became more and more interested in it. One day, while watching a TV show about cafes, George said, "Hey, let's try this one next time." Soon, he even started making coffee at home, and the whole house was filled with the wonderful smell of freshly brewed coffee. "Wow, Dad's coffee is really good," our son James said during a visit. "See, I told you, it's all about the beans," George replied with a smile. James, who is now 38 and has been living independently for a long time, comes home occasionally to visit and share interesting stories from work. "Are you and Dad doing okay? Any changes?" James asked. "We're the same as always," I replied. "That's good, but you two are getting older, so take care of yourselves," James said with concern. "Don't worry about us," I reassured him. "Even at retirement age, we're still going strong." James chuckled. "Dad, you really are full of energy." Spending these peaceful, carefree moments with my husband and son makes me incredibly happy. Looking back, George and I rarely ever argued, and I don't think James went through a rebellious phase. George and I first met during our college days. We were in the same department and saw each other in class often. Eventually, George asked me out, and we started dating. Being with him always made me feel calm and happy. Even after we started working, we stayed together, and a few years later, we got married. Our married life was full of happiness. For the first few years after we got married, we worried we might not be able to have children, but then, our son was born. He was so adorable, like a little angel. I still remember how happy my husband was when he held our baby for the first time. Since then, the three of us lived a happy life together. Our son grew up to be kind and good-hearted. Even though my husband and I both worked and might have left him feeling lonely sometimes, he didn't seem to go through any real troubles during his teenage years. "Mom, Dad, there's something I want to do, and I need your support," he once said. Our son knew what he wanted in life early on and followed that path with determination. We supported him completely and were so proud to see him achieve his goals. Even after becoming an adult, he always showed us love and care, taking us on trips and to nice restaurants. As we got older, my husband and I would sometimes get emotional, crying and thanking him, only for him to laugh at how dramatic we were. Later, our son married a wonderful woman, and my husband and I were overjoyed. I have a supportive wife who helps me in my busy work life, so I want to work hard to protect our family, he once told us. Our daughter-in-law has a lovely smile and a gentle nature, perfect for our hardworking son. The couple continued to visit us regularly, and we always enjoyed spending time with them. However, recently, my husband started having health problems. As our son had warned, we needed to take care of ourselves, so we went to the hospital together. There, the doctor gave us devastating news. "It's terminal cancer. You have about a year left to live." My husband and I were both stunned. We had planned to spend our retirement years together, and we even talked about opening a small cafe at our own pace. The news left us heartbroken. "I can't believe it. Dad has cancer," our son said, equally shocked. "We don't have kids yet, and I was just thinking about showing you your grandchild soon." It was a tough situation for all of us, but my husband was the one facing the hardest part. He was hospitalized and started cancer treatment. "How's the treatment going? Is it painful?" I asked. "I'm fine. Who knows? Maybe I'll beat cancer if I keep going like this, right?" he said, trying to stay strong, but the treatment was clearly tough. His face had become thin, and his body was getting weaker. "Susan, I'm sorry, I might leave you behind and die first," my husband said softly. "What are you talking about? You still have more than half a year left. According to the doctor, you never know, you might live even longer. We just have to stay positive and keep hoping," I replied, trying to reassure him. "Yeah, But I just wanted to apologize in advance. I could pass away at any moment. Don't say that, I said, noticing how weak he seemed, not just physically, but mentally too. Our son, seeing his dad's low spirits, wanted to do something special for him. I want to grant Dad's wish before he becomes too weak to go out. Yeah, let's ask him, I said, encouraged by our son. So, I gently asked my husband, if you could go out right now, where would you like to go? We might not be able to stay overnight, but maybe we could go for a short trip. Oh, I know, he said, there's a hot spring a few hours away by car. A hot spring? I asked. Yeah, and there's a cafe nearby that serves delicious coffee. I couldn't help but smile. My husband always loved coffee and cafes. Let's go to the hot spring and have some of that delicious coffee. Hearing that, my husband looked genuinely happy. I hope the doctor will give us permission, he said with a hopeful smile. Later, I spoke to the doctor, and fortunately, he agreed, saying my husband's condition was stable enough for a short outing. So, we went on a family trip, the first one in a long time. It was only a day trip, but it felt wonderful to go out together as a family. Our son drove, and the four of us, my husband, our son, his wife, and I, headed to the hot spring and cafe. The large outdoor bath at the hot spring had a breathtaking view, and the weather was perfect. It was an incredible experience for all of us. At the cafe, we heard the men's bath had an amazing view as well, and the hot spring itself was a wonderful place to relax. We finally had the coffee we'd been looking forward to, and it was so delicious that it touched our hearts. I'm glad we could enjoy this delicious coffee together. Thank you so much. I'll keep doing my best with the treatment, my husband said to us with a gentle smile. Even though we waited and waited, there was no sign of anyone calling us. Before we knew it, 3 hours had passed. People who arrived later than us were being served, and we found it strange. That bank clerk, Michael, was helping other customers like he had completely forgotten about us. I felt I had to say something, so as soon as Michael finished with a customer, I quickly went over to him. Excuse me, we've been waiting for a long time. When can we have the meeting about the loan? I asked. Michael looked at me with annoyance. Are you still here? Huh? What do you mean? I was confused. There's no way we're giving a loan to someone like you to open a cafe or any shop. You're too old, he said bluntly. You're not even wearing brand name clothes, and you don't look rich at all. It's a waste of time dealing with poor people like you. I'll help you if I have any time left over. With that, he laughed and shooed us away like we didn't matter. I was shocked. Normally, I'm a kind person, but this was too much. I was furious. Just then, my son returned from the restroom, and I told him everything Michael had said. After hearing the story, my son raised his voice, making sure Michael could hear. If I withdraw the 1 billion yen I deposited here, I wonder if I could shut this place down. Michael looked puzzled. What? He muttered. Sir, if you're going to cause a disturbance, please leave. You're bothering other customers, Michael said, completely missing the point. I couldn't believe Michael had the nerve to say that to my son, but my son remained calm. I recently moved my business deposit to this bank, but I guess that was a mistake. Call the branch manager because I can't talk to you, my son demanded. Stop it, or I'll sue you for obstructing business, Michael snapped, refusing to help. Even my son had reached his limit of patience. Fine, I'll make a call myself, he said, pulling out his phone. A few moments later, the branch manager came running out of the back room, clearly in a panic. Mr. Johnson, what happened? The manager asked, looking worried as he addressed my son. Michael's eyes widened in surprise when he realized what was happening. Branch manager, what's going on with this bank? This is Michael Clark. He made my mother wait over 3 hours, called her a poor person, and tried to send her away, my son said firmly. What, Michael, what the hell are you doing? The branch manager asked, clearly upset. Mr. Johnson, could you please come to the reception room? I want to apologize, Michael stammered. We decided to follow the branch manager to avoid disturbing the other customers further. Once we reached the reception room, the branch manager bowed deeply and apologized. I'm truly sorry about this. Michael just transferred from another bank, and we didn't have a close relationship with you yet. Our other staff members were too busy to notice, he explained. It's fine, manager. I'm not asking for special treatment. I just want you to address how he treated my mother and judged her based on her appearance, I replied. Of course, the branch manager said. Michael, Hurry up and apologize. This person is the owner and chef of a famous restaurant. They just opened a new store in this area and deposited 1 billion yen in our branch, the manager added. Huh? Michael said, turning pale as he realized who we were. He quickly bowed and apologized. I'm so sorry. Michael, have you always treated customers differently based on your own judgments? If so, you're not fit to be a bank employee or even work in customer service, I said firmly. At the very least, we don't want to do any business here anymore. No, please reconsider, Mr. Johnson, the branch manager pleaded. Unfortunately, we can't trust this bank as it is. Show your sincerity, and then we can talk. If you can't do that, I'll withdraw all my deposits by the end of this month, my son said, and we left the bank. A week later, the branch manager called my son. He explained that the bank had conducted a detailed investigation into Michael and found that he had been turning away customers for loans based on his own judgments. They also discovered that he had embezzled the bank's money. Unsurprisingly, Michael was fired. The branch manager called my son several times to apologize and offered various favorable terms for my loan. My son felt the manager's sincerity and decided not to withdraw the deposits. Thanks to the manager's proposals, I was able to secure a loan at a very good rate. With everything in place, I was finally able to open my cafe. Initially, I had planned to start a coffee shop, but since my daughter-in-law had a nutritionist certification, we decided to open a cafe with healthy and nutritious menu options. We also carried my husband's passion for coffee and served delicious brews. My son supported the cafe from behind the scenes, helping me stock up on famous coffee beans. The cafe thrived and became popular among female customers for its delicious coffee and food. I don't know how much longer I can work, but I will do my best to run the cafe for my husband's sake as well. Narrator's thoughts. Bank employees like Michael still exist nowadays, and it's frustrating to see someone change their attitude based on a customer's appearance. There is no forgiveness for embezzling money. I'm glad the protagonist was able to open the cafe safely. I think my son is very cool for standing up for his mother. Please continue living a fulfilling life while working hard at the cafe and maintaining good family relationships. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.
The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my concentration. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been poring over sales figures to see Ethan standing in the doorway of my home office, his face flushed with anger. "For God's sake, Julia! Are you still playing around with that little soap business of yours?" he spat, gesturing wildly at the shards of what used to be my favorite mug scattered across the hardwood floor. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Ethan, I've told you 1,000 times, this isn't a hobby, it's a successful business that—" "Successful?" He barked out a laugh. "Don't make me laugh. You and your friends buying each other's overpriced lotions doesn't count as success." I felt my cheeks burning. "Actually, we just hit 500,000 in annual sales. I was about to tell you." "Oh, please," Ethan scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Next, you'll be telling me you're some big-shot CEO. Face it, Julia, you're just playing pretend while I'm out there making real money." I stood up, my hands shaking. "I am not playing pretend. I've built this company from the ground up, and it's growing every day. Why can't you see that?" Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Because I'm not blind, Julia. I see what's really going on here. You're so desperate to feel important that you've convinced yourself this little side project actually matters." "It does matter," I shouted, surprising myself with the force of my words. "Natural glow is my passion, my dream, and it's not just me. We have a team of dedicated employees, loyal customers." "Employees?" Ethan sneered. "You mean those college kids you pay to stuff boxes? Real impressive, Julia." I felt something snap inside me. "You know what, Ethan? I'm done trying to convince you. My business is thriving, whether you believe it or not." He stepped closer, his voice low and menacing. "Well, maybe it's time you choose between your little fantasy world and your marriage. Because I'm getting real tired of playing second fiddle to a bunch of fancy soaps." My heart pounded in my chest. "What are you saying?" Ethan's eyes were cold. "I'm saying that if you don't get your priorities straight, you might find yourself running that cute little company of yours all on your own, as a divorcee." The word hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. I stared at him, searching for any sign of the man I'd fallen in love with all those years ago, but all I saw was a stranger, bitter and small. You don't mean that, I whispered, more to myself than to him. He shrugged, already turning away. Keep telling yourself that, Julia. Just like you keep pretending you're some big-shot businesswoman. As he walked out, leaving me alone with the broken pieces of my mug, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt and anger were still there, but underneath it all, a new emotion was taking root. Determination. I looked back at my laptop screen where the numbers didn't lie. 500,000 in sales, a growing customer base, international interest in my products. Ethan might not believe in me, but I knew the truth, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine a future where I didn't have to constantly defend my dreams. A future where, just maybe, I didn't need Ethan's approval at all. As I bent down to clean up the broken mug, my phone pinged with a new email notification. I glanced at the screen and froze. Subject: Exciting Opportunity International Expansion Proposal. My heart raced as I read the first few lines. This could be it. The chance I'd been waiting for. The validation I'd been craving. But Ethan's words echoed in my mind, along with his thinly veiled threat of divorce. I stood there, torn between my lifelong dream and the marriage I'd fought so hard to keep alive. Little did I know, this email was about to set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. I stared at my phone, heart pounding as I reread the email for the 10th time. An international cosmetics expo in Paris, with a chance to showcase natural glow to buyers from across Europe. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, the kind I'd dreamed about since launching my business. But Ethan's words from our fight last night still echoed in my ears. Choose between your little fantasy world and your marriage. I took a deep breath and dialed the number of my best friend and business partner, Megan. Jules, what's up? Megan's cheerful voice answered. Meg, we got invited to the Paris Expo, I blurted out. It's huge. We could break into the European market. Oh my God, Julia. That's amazing, Megan squealed. When do we leave? I hesitated. That's the thing. I don't know if I can go. What? Why not? Megan's tone shifted from excitement to concern. Ethan, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He doesn't think the business is serious. He even threatened divorce if I don't get my priorities straight. There was a long pause on the other end. Julia, Megan finally said, her voice firm. You listen to me. This is your dream. Don't let anyone, not even your husband, stand in the way of that. As if on cue, I heard the front door slam. Ethan was home. I've got to go, I told Megan quickly. I'll call you back. I ended the call just as Ethan walked into the kitchen. His eyes narrowed when he saw me. Still playing businesswoman, I see, he sneered. Something in me snapped. Actually, I just got some incredible news. We've been invited to a major cosmetics expo in Paris. It could be huge for natural glow. Ethan's laugh was cold and mocking. Paris? You've got to be kidding me. What, you think you're going to strut around the Champs-Élysées pretending to be some big shot? This is a legitimate business opportunity, I insisted, my voice rising. Why can't you see that? Because it's ridiculous, Ethan shouted. You're embarrassing yourself, Julia. And worse, you're embarrassing me. My wife, gallivanting off to Paris to play with her little soaps while I'm working a real job. I felt tears pricking at my eyes, but I blinked them back. I'm going, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. With or without your support. Ethan's face turned an alarming shade of red. If you get on that plane, he hissed, don't bother coming back. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I stood my ground. Is that what you really want, Ethan? To throw away our marriage over this? He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw clenched. Then, without another word, he turned and stormed out of the kitchen. I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly weak. With shaking hands, I picked up my phone and dialed Megan again. Book the flights, I said when she answered. We're going to Paris. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparations and icy silence at home. Ethan barely spoke to me, and when he did, it was only to make snide comments about my little trip. But as the day of departure drew closer, I felt a growing sense of excitement and purpose. This was my chance to prove myself, not just to Ethan, but to the world. The morning of the flight, I stood in our bedroom, zipping up my suitcase. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, watching me with cold eyes. So you're really going through with this, he said. I met his gaze. Yes, I am. He shook his head. Don't expect me to be here when you get back. The words stung, but I refused to let him see how much they hurt. I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. As I wheeled my suitcase past him, Ethan grabbed my arm. Julia, he said, his voice low and dangerous, if you walk out that door, you're choosing your stupid hobby over our marriage? Is that what you want? I looked into the eyes of the man I'd once loved more than anything in the world, and in that moment I made my choice. No, Ethan, I said, gently but firmly removing his hand from my arm. I'm choosing myself. With that, I walked out the door and into an uncertain future, my heart pounding with fear and exhilaration in equal measure. The Parisian sun streamed through the windows of our booth at the expo, illuminating the colorful array of natural glow products. I took a deep breath, inhaling the sweet scent of lavender and citrus that filled the air. Julia, you won't believe this. Megan rushed over, her eyes wide with excitement. The buyer from Galeries Lafayette wants to meet with us. Today! My heart skipped a beat. Galeries Lafayette was one of the most prestigious department stores in Paris. This could be our big break. That's incredible, Meg, I exclaimed, pushing thoughts of Ethan to the back of my mind. When? In an hour, she replied, glancing at her watch. We need to prepare. The next 60 minutes flew by in a whirlwind of activity. We polished our pitch, gathered samples, and I changed into my most professional outfit. As we made our way to the meeting room, I felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration. The buyer, a chic Frenchwoman named Adeline, greeted us warmly. Bonjour, mesdames. I've heard wonderful things about natural glow. As we launched into our presentation, I felt a surge of confidence. This was my passion, my creation. For the first time in years, I didn't hear Ethan's mocking voice in the back of my mind. Adeline asked thoughtful questions, her interest evident. When we finished, she smiled. I'm impressed. We'd like to start with a trial run in our Paris store. I could hardly contain my excitement. That would be amazing, Adeline. Thank you so much for this opportunity. As we shook hands, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it, focusing on the moment. Back at our booth, Megan and I hugged, laughing with joy. We did it, Jules, she squealed. We're going to be in Galeries Lafayette. I pulled out my phone to share the news with our team back home and froze. 5 missed calls from Ethan. What's wrong? Megan asked, noticing my expression. I shook my head. It's Ethan. I should call him back. Megan's face hardened. Jules, you don't owe him anything, not after how he's treated you. I know, but... I trailed off, torn between my lingering sense of obligation and the newfound freedom I'd been experiencing. Fine, Megan sighed, but I'm right here if you need me. I stepped outside and dialed Ethan's number, my stomach in knots. Well, his voice dripped with sarcasm. The international businesswoman finally has time for her husband. I bit back a retort. What do you want, Ethan? I want you to come home, he snapped. This little adventure of yours has gone on long enough. I took a deep breath. Actually, we just landed a deal with Galeries Lafayette. It's a huge opportunity for natural glow. There was a long pause. When Ethan spoke again, his voice was cold. So that's it? You're choosing your soap business over our marriage? That's not fair, I protested. This is my dream, Ethan. Why can't you be happy for me? Happy? He scoffed. You've embarrassed me, Julia. Everyone's asking why my wife is gallivanting around Paris instead of being home where she belongs. His words hit me like a slap. Where I belong. I belong wherever I choose to be, Ethan, and right now, that's here, growing my business. Fine, he spat, but don't expect things to be the same when you get back. I've had enough of this nonsense. The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling a mix of anger and relief wash over me. Megan appeared at my side. You okay? I nodded slowly. You know what? I think I am. For the first time in a long time, I feel free. She squeezed my hand. Good, now, let's go celebrate our big win. As we walked back into the expo, my phone buzzed again. A text from Ethan. I mean it, Julia. Things will be different when you get home. I stared at the message, a chill running down my spine. What exactly did he mean by different? And more importantly, was I ready to face whatever awaited me back home? For now, though, I pushed those thoughts aside. I had a successful business to run, and a whole new world of possibilities opening up before me. Whatever Ethan had planned, I'd face it when the time came. With a deep breath, I stepped back into the bustling expo, ready to embrace my new reality, for better or for worse. The moment I stepped through our front door, I knew something was wrong. The house was eerily quiet, and there was a heaviness in the air that made my skin prickle. "Ethan?" I called out, wheeling my suitcase behind me. No answer. I made my way to the kitchen, my footsteps echoing in the silence. That's when I saw it. A thick manila envelope on the counter, my name scrawled across it in Ethan's handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened it. The words "petition for divorce" jumped out at me, and my world tilted on its axis. "So, you're finally home." I whirled around to find Ethan leaning against the doorframe, his arms crossed. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth I'd once loved. "What is this?" I demanded, waving the papers at him. He shrugged, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Exactly what it looks like. I told you things would be different when you got back." I felt like I couldn't breathe. Despite our fights, despite his threats, I never truly believed he'd go this far. "Ethan, we can talk about this. We can—" "There's nothing to talk about," he cut me off. "You made your choice in Paris, now I'm making mine." "This isn't a choice," I shouted, anger finally breaking through my shock. "This is an ultimatum." "Call it what you want," he sneered. "But it's time you faced reality, Julia. Your little soap business isn't going to support you. You need me." His words hit me like a physical blow. After everything, the successful expo, the deal with Gallery Lafayette, he still saw my business as nothing more than a hobby. "You're wrong," I said, my voice low and steady. "I don't need you, Ethan. I never did." Something flashed in his eyes. Surprise, maybe even a hint of fear. But it was quickly replaced by contempt. "We'll see about that. You have 30 days to respond to the petition. I suggest you think long and hard about your next move." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving me alone with the weight of his ultimatum. I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. This was it, the moment that would define the rest of my life. I could give in to Ethan's demands, abandon my dreams, and salvage what was left of our marriage. Or I could stand my ground and face an uncertain future alone. My phone buzzed, startling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Adeline, the buyer from Gallery Lafayette. "Great news. Sales of Natural Glow products exceeding expectations. Interested in expanding to all our stores. Call me to discuss." I stared at the screen, a slow smile spreading across my face. This was the validation I'd been seeking for years, proof that my little soap business was anything but. With newfound resolve, I stood up and began packing a bag. I couldn't stay here, not with Ethan's ultimatum hanging over my head. I needed space to think, to plan my next move. As I zipped up my suitcase, my eyes fell on a framed photo of Ethan and me on our wedding day. We looked so happy, so full of hope for the future. Where had it all gone wrong? I picked up the frame, tracing Ethan's smiling face with my finger. Then, with a deep breath, I placed it face down on the dresser. "Goodbye, Ethan," I whispered. I grabbed my bags and walked out the front door, not bothering to leave a note. Let him wonder where I'd gone. Let him feel a fraction of the uncertainty he'd forced upon me. As I drove away from the house we'd shared for over a decade, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. My phone buzzed again, another message from Adeline. "Julia, are you there? This could be huge for Natural Glow." I smiled, despite the tears streaming down my face. Yes, it could be huge, and I was ready to seize the opportunity with both hands. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. I was done letting Ethan or anyone else dictate my worth. It was time to show the world and myself exactly what Julia Mason was capable of. The gentle hum of my parents' kitchen filled the air as I pored over financial reports spread across the table. My mother placed a steaming mug of coffee beside me, her hand lingering on my shoulder. "You're working too hard, sweetheart," she said softly. I looked up, offering a tired smile. "I have to, Mom. The European expansion is taking off faster than we anticipated." The doorbell rang, cutting through our conversation. My father's voice drifted from the hallway, followed by a familiar, unwelcome tone that made my blood run cold. "Ethan." I stood as he entered the kitchen, his eyes narrowing at the sight of my work materials. "Still playing entrepreneur, I see," he sneered. My mother bristled beside me. "Ethan, that's enough." "It's okay, Mom," I interjected, meeting Ethan's gaze. "What do you want?" He tossed a folder onto the table, scattering my papers. "Your lawyer's been ducking my calls. We need to discuss the division of assets." I felt a surge of anger. "There's nothing to discuss. I'm not signing those papers." Ethan's face reddened. You can't just ignore this, Julia. We need to settle things. Settle what exactly? I challenged, my voice rising. The house you claim is solely yours? The savings account you control? He scoffed. Don't act like you've contributed anything significant. Your little soap hobby barely covers its own costs. Something inside me snapped. I'd had enough of his belittling, his assumptions, his complete disregard for my hard work. You have no idea, do you? I said, my voice dangerously calm. I reached for my laptop, pulling up our financial records. Take a look, Ethan. Really look. His eyes widened as he scanned the screen, taking in the sales figures, the profit margins, the projections for the coming year. This can't be right, he stammered. Oh, it's right, I assured him. Natural Glow isn't just covering its costs, it's been the main source of our household income for the past 2 years. The color drained from Ethan's face. But your little hobby has grown into a $500,000 business, I finished for him. And that's before the European expansion. My mother gasped softly behind me, and I realized I'd never fully disclosed the extent of my success to my parents either. Ethan's shock quickly morphed into anger. You've been lying to me all this time? No, Ethan, I said firmly. You just never bothered to listen. He slammed his fist on the table, making us all jump. This changes nothing. You still abandoned our marriage for your precious business. I didn't abandon anything, I retorted. You gave me an ultimatum, and now you're realizing you might have bet on the wrong horse. Ethan's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal. We can work this out, Julia. We can... No, I cut him off, surprised by the steel in my own voice. We can't. You never believed in me, Ethan. You never supported my dreams. And now that you see what I've built, you want a piece of it? I stood straighter, feeling stronger than I had in years. Well, here's my ultimatum. I'll see you in court. Ethan's face contorted with rage. He opened his mouth to speak, but my father stepped forward, his presence commanding. I think it's time for you to leave, Ethan, he said quietly. For a moment, I thought Ethan might argue. But then his shoulders slumped, and without another word, he turned and left. As the front door slammed shut, I felt the adrenaline drain from my body. I sank into a chair, my hands shaking. My mother wrapped her arms around me. Oh, sweetheart, we had no idea. It's okay, Mom, I whispered. I didn't want anyone to know. I thought if I just worked hard enough, Ethan would finally see. My father's hand rested on my shoulder. You've nothing to prove to him, Julia, or to anyone. I nodded, wiping away tears I hadn't realized were falling. As the shock of the confrontation faded, a new feeling took its place. Determination. I turned back to my laptop, to the numbers that told the story of my success. You're right, Dad. I have nothing to prove. I took a deep breath, my mind already racing with plans. But I have everything to fight for. The boardroom buzzed with excitement as I presented our latest quarterly results. Natural Glow's European expansion had exceeded even our most optimistic projections. As I wrapped up, applause filled the room, and my team's faces beamed with pride. Just as we were about to break for celebration, my assistant burst in, her face pale. Julia, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent situation downstairs. It's Ethan. My heart plummeted. What was he doing here? I excused myself and hurried to the lobby, my mind racing. As the elevator doors opened, I saw him, Ethan, disheveled and wild-eyed, arguing loudly with security. Sir, you need to leave, the guard was saying firmly. Not until I speak to my wife, Ethan shouted, his voice slurring slightly. Had he been drinking? I stepped forward, my voice steady despite my racing pulse. Ethan, what are you doing here? He whirled to face me, his eyes bloodshot. Julia, thank God. We need to talk. Now. I glanced at the concerned faces around us. Not here. Follow me. I led him to an empty conference room, closing the door behind us. What's going on, Ethan? He ran a hand through his unkempt hair. I've made a terrible mistake, Jules. I want to call off the divorce. I stared at him, stunned. What? I was wrong, he continued, his words tumbling out. About everything. Your business, your success. I see it now. And I want us to start over. For a moment I felt a flicker of the old longing, but then I remembered all the years of belittlement, of doubt, of feeling small in my own home. It's too late, Ethan, I said quietly. His face crumpled. No, please, I'll do anything. I'll support your business, Stop, I cut him off. This isn't about the business anymore. It's about us. about how you never believed in me, never supported my dreams. I can change, he pleaded, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. People don't change overnight, Ethan, and I'm not the same person I was when we married. I've grown. I've built something I'm proud of, without you. His desperation turned to anger. So that's it? You're just throwing away our marriage? No, I said firmly. You did that when you handed me those divorce papers. Ethan's face darkened. You'll regret this, Julia. You think you can run this company without me? You'll crash and burn and I'll be there to watch. A chill ran down my spine at his words, but I stood my ground. I think you should leave now, Ethan. He glared at me for a long moment before storming out, slamming the door behind him. I sank into a chair, my hands shaking. What had I done? For a brief moment, I wondered if I'd made a mistake. Maybe we could have worked things out. A knock at the door jolted me from my thoughts. Megan poked her head in, concern etched on her face. Jules, are you okay? We saw Ethan leave. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm fine. Just processing. Megan sat beside me, taking my hand. Want to talk about it? I shook my head. Not now. We have work to do. As we walked back to the boardroom, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. This isn't over. You'll see how much you need me. I stared at the message, a mix of fear and determination washing over me. What did he mean? What was he planning? As I rejoined my team, their excited chatter about our success faded into background noise. I'd fought so hard to get here, to prove myself. And now, just when everything was falling into place, Ethan's threat loomed over it all. Could I really do this without him? Had I made a terrible mistake? As doubt crept in, I looked around at my team, at the empire we'd built together. No, I realized. I hadn't made a mistake. I'd finally taken control of my own destiny. Whatever Ethan had planned, whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them. Because for the first time in my life, I truly believed in myself. And that, I realized, was worth fighting for. I stared at the email on my screen, my heart pounding. The subject line read, Urgent, Natural Glow Product Recall. This can't be happening, I whispered, scrolling through the message. Reports of severe allergic reactions to our newest line of moisturizers were flooding in from across Europe. How was this possible? We'd done extensive testing, followed every regulation to the letter. My phone buzzed incessantly. Calls from retailers, panicked emails from our European distributors. The empire I'd built was crumbling before my eyes. Megan burst into my office, her face ashen. Julia, have you seen the news? It's all over social media. They're calling it the natural glow nightmare. I nodded numbly, my mind racing. We needed to act fast to get ahead of this before it spiraled completely out of control. As I drafted an emergency press release, my phone lit up with an incoming call. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. Enjoying your little crisis? His voice dripped with malice. My blood ran cold. Ethan, what did you do? He chuckled darkly. Me? I didn't do anything. But it seems your successful business isn't so successful after all, is it? You're behind this somehow, I accused, my voice shaking with anger and fear. Prove it, he taunted. Face it, Julia. You're in over your head. You always were. It was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. The line went dead, leaving me reeling. Could Ethan really have sabotaged my products? But how? And why go to such extreme lengths? I had no time to dwell on it. The situation was escalating by the minute. Our stock was plummeting, and I could almost hear the vultures circling. Julia, the board is demanding an emergency meeting, my assistant called from the doorway, and there are reporters gathering in the lobby. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This was the moment that would define everything, my company, my career, my life's work. As I stepped into the boardroom, facing the grim faces of my investors and executives, I felt the weight of it all pressing down on me. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if Ethan had been right all along. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe I was just playing at being a businesswoman. But then I thought of all the hurdles I'd overcome, all the times I'd proven him wrong. I'd built this company from nothing, expanded it across continents. I wasn't about to let it all slip away now. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice stronger than I felt. We're facing an unprecedented crisis. But I assure you, we will weather this storm. As I laid out our action plan, a full recall, transparent communication with customers, a thorough investigation into our supply chain, I saw a glimmer of hope return to the eyes around the table. Just as I was wrapping up, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Ethan. Ready to admit defeat yet? It's not too late to come crawling back. His words ignited a fire within me. This wasn't just about saving my company anymore. It was about proving to Ethan and to myself that I was stronger than he ever gave me credit for. I turned back to the board, a new determination in my voice. We're not just going to survive this. We're going to come back stronger than ever. As I walked out of the boardroom, my mind was already racing with ideas. I'd find out the truth behind this sabotage, clear our name, and rebuild Natural Glow's reputation. Ethan thought he could break me, but he'd only succeeded in making me more determined than ever. This was war, and I intended to win. Little did I know, the real battle was only just beginning. I stood at the podium, cameras flashing, as I addressed the packed press conference. 6 months had passed since the Natural Glow nightmare, and we'd weathered the storm. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady and confident, I'm pleased to announce that after a thorough investigation, we've not only cleared Natural Glow of any wrongdoing, but uncovered a deliberate act of sabotage. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I caught sight of Ethan at the back of the room, his face pale. Thanks to the tireless efforts of our team and law enforcement, we've traced the contamination to a disgruntled former employee who was working in collusion with a competitor. I paused, letting the information sink in. I'm happy to report that both parties have been arrested and will face criminal charges. As I detailed our comeback strategy, improved quality control, a revolutionary new product line, and a partnership with a leading dermatological institute, I saw the spark of excitement return to the eyes of the reporters and investors present. Natural Glow isn't just recovering, I concluded. We're emerging stronger, more innovative, and more committed to our customers than ever before. The room erupted in applause. As I stepped away from the podium, my lawyer approached, a thick envelope in hand. It's done, Julia, she said with a smile. The divorce is final. I took the envelope, a wave of emotion washing over me. It was over. Really, truly over. As the crowd dispersed, I found myself face to face with Ethan. He looked haggard, defeated. Congratulations, he said, his voice hollow. You did it. You proved me wrong. I studied him, remembering the man I'd once loved, the one who'd made me doubt myself for so long. I didn't do this to prove you wrong, Ethan. I did it because I believed in myself, in my vision. Something you never could. He flinched at my words. I was a fool, Julia. I see that now. I've lost everything. My job, our friends, my reputation. I don't know how to come back from this. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity. But then I remembered all the years of belittlement, of crushing my dreams. You'll figure it out, I said, my voice firm, but not unkind. Just like I did when you left me with nothing but my little soap hobby. As Ethan walked away, shoulders slumped, I felt no joy in his downfall. Only a sense of closure, of a chapter finally ending. Megan appeared at my side, grinning from ear to ear. We did it, boss. We're back on top. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. We sure did, but this is just the beginning. Later that evening, as I sat in my new penthouse office overlooking the city, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The doubts, the fears, the moments of near defeat, but also the triumphs, the growth, the discovery of my own strength. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. You showed them all. I smiled, tears pricking at my eyes. Yes, I had shown them all. But more importantly, I'd shown myself what I was capable of. As I looked out at the twinkling city lights, I felt a sense of excitement for the future. Natural Glow was thriving, expanding into new markets. I had a team that believed in me, a family that supported me, and a newfound confidence that no one could shake. Ethan had tried to clip my wings to keep me small and dependent, but in doing so, he'd only pushed me to soar higher than I ever thought possible. I picked up a bottle of our newest product, a rejuvenating serum that was already generating buzz in the beauty world. Natural Glow Resilience, the label read. How fitting, I thought. As I applied the serum, feeling its cool touch on my skin, I made a silent promise to myself. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the same resilience that had brought me here. Because I was Julia Mason, CEO of Natural Glow. And I was just getting started. I smoothed my dress for the 100th time, fussing with the emerald pendant Mark had given me for our 10th anniversary. Tonight was supposed to be perfect, our 20th wedding anniversary dinner at Le Petit Chateau. But as I gazed at my reflection, all I could see was the worry lines etched around my eyes. "Mom, you look amazing." Marie burst into the room, her enthusiasm infectious. At 18, she was the spitting image of me at that age. "Dad's gonna flip when he sees you." I forced a smile. "Thanks, sweetie. Is everyone ready?" "Jessie's still hogging the bathroom, and the twins are arguing over shoes. You know, the usual chaos." I laughed, grateful for the distraction. "Well, go wrangle your sisters. We can't be late for our reservation." As Marie left, I took a deep breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Mark had been distant lately, working late hours and taking mysterious phone calls. But tonight was about us, about celebrating 2 decades of love and family. Downstairs, I found Mark pacing in the living room, phone pressed to his ear. "I told you not tonight," he hissed, then quickly hung up when he saw me. "Everything okay?" I asked, my stomach clenching. He plastered on a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Of course, just work stuff. You look stunning, Anna." Before I could respond, the girls thundered down the stairs, a whirlwind of perfume and excited chatter. Jessie, ever the fashionista at 16, twirled in her new dress. "How do I look, Dad?" Mark's smile softened as he looked at our daughters. "You all look beautiful. Now let's get going before we lose our table." The car ride was filled with the girls' animated conversation, but I couldn't focus. Mark's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and he barely said a word. At the restaurant, we were led to a secluded table draped in crisp white linen. As we settled in, I noticed a woman at the bar watching us intently. She was striking, with long dark hair and piercing green eyes. When she caught me looking, she quickly turned away. "Earth to Mom," Lily said, waving a menu in front of my face. "What are you getting?" I blinked, forcing myself to focus on my family. "Oh, I'm not sure yet. What looks good to you?" As the girls debated appetizers, I glanced at Mark. He was staring at his phone, brow furrowed. "Everything all right, honey?" I asked quietly. He jumped slightly. "Yeah, fine. Just a work email." The waiter arrived to take our order, and conversation flowed more easily as we reminisced about family vacations and shared jokes. For a moment, I felt the tension ease. This was how it should be, the 5 of us together, celebrating our life. But as I excused myself to use the restroom, I caught sight of the dark-haired woman again. This time she was standing near Mark, speaking to him in hushed tones. His face had gone pale. My heart pounding, I ducked into the hallway before they could see me. What was going on? Who was this woman, and why did she have such an effect on my husband? I leaned against the wall, trying to calm my racing thoughts. This was supposed to be a night of celebration, not suspicion and fear. But as I stood there, I couldn't shake the feeling that our carefully constructed life was about to shatter. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed my dress and stepped back into the dining room. I had to face whatever was coming head-on. For my girls, for our family. As I approached the table, Mark's eyes met mine. In that moment, I saw guilt, fear, and something else I couldn't quite name. My throat tightened as I realized our anniversary dinner was about to become something very different from what I'd imagined. "Anna," Mark said, his voice strained, "we need to talk." I sat at Jane's kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug of chamomile tea. The familiar scent of lavender and vanilla that always lingered in her home usually brought me comfort, but today it did little to soothe my frayed nerves. "Anna, honey, you need to breathe," Jane said, her weathered hand covering mine. "Tell me everything." I took a shaky breath and recounted the disastrous anniversary dinner. The mysterious woman, Mark's guilty expression, and the tense car ride home where he'd stammered through a partial confession about a mistake he'd made years ago. Jane's blue eyes, still sharp despite her 60-plus years, narrowed. "And you believe him? That it was just one mistake?" I shrugged helplessly. "I don't know what to believe anymore. He swears it's in the past, but something doesn't feel right. The girls are devastated. Marie overheard us arguing and told her sisters. Now they're all giving Mark the cold shoulder." "Good," Jane said firmly. "They should. Anna, listen to me. Men like Mark, they don't change. If he did it once, he'll do it again." "But 20 years, Jane. We built a life together. How could he throw that away?" Jane leaned forward, her expression softening. Oh, sweetie, I know it hurts, but you can't just take his word for it. You need proof, one way or the other. I recoiled. What, like hire a private investigator? That seems so extreme. Extreme times call for extreme measures, Jane replied. You have 4 daughters to think about. You need to protect yourself and them. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Jesse. Dad's acting weird. Says he has to go out of town for work, emergency meeting or something. I showed Jane the message, my stomach churning. See? This is what I mean. He's never had to travel for work before. Jane's lips pressed into a thin line. Anna, I'm going to be blunt. You need to start gathering evidence. Bank statements, phone records, anything you can get your hands on. And yes, consider hiring someone to follow him. The idea made me sick, but a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that she was right. I don't even know where to start, I admitted. I'll help you, Jane said, squeezing my hand. We'll figure this out together. Just then, my phone rang. It was Marie. Mom? Her voice was tight with panic. You need to come home. Now. What's wrong? I asked, already standing. It's Dad. He's packing a suitcase, saying he needs some time away to clear his head. Mom, I think he's leaving us. My world tilted on its axis. I'm on my way, I managed to say before hanging up. Jane was already grabbing her car keys. I'm driving, thus you're in no state. The ride home was a blur. My mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. How had my life unraveled so quickly? We pulled into the driveway just as Mark was loading a suitcase into his car. The girls stood on the porch, huddled together like frightened birds. Mark, I called out, my voice stronger than I felt. What the hell do you think you're doing? He turned, his face a mask of guilt and defiance. Anna, I can explain. Oh, I'm sure you can. I spat. But not here, not in front of the girls. Jane stepped forward, her presence solid and reassuring. Girls, why don't you come with me? Your parents need to talk. As Jane ushered my daughters inside, I faced Mark. 20 years of love and trust hung in the balance, but as I looked into his eyes, I saw a stranger. Start talking, I said, my voice low and dangerous, and this time I want the whole truth. The manila envelope felt heavy in my hands as I sat at the kitchen table, staring at it like it might bite. 2 weeks had passed since Mark's botched attempt to leave, and the tension in our house was thick enough to cut with a knife. The girls walked on eggshells, and Mark was barely home anymore. I took a deep breath and opened the envelope. The private investigator, a recommendation from Jane, had promised results within days. As I spread the contents across the table, my heart sank. Photos, dozens of them, Mark with a striking blonde woman holding hands, kissing in a park, and then my breath caught. A boy, maybe 10 years old, with Mark's unmistakable eyes and smile. The front door slammed, making me jump. Marie stormed in, her face streaked with tears. Mom, she called, then stopped short when she saw the photos. What's all this? I hesitated, then decided honesty was the best policy. Sweetie, come sit down. There's something we need to talk about. Marie's eyes widened as I explained about the private investigator and showed her the photos. Her hands shook as she picked up a picture of the boy. Do I have a brother? She whispered. Before I could answer, Jessie burst through the door, her face flushed with excitement. Mom, you'll never guess what She froze, taking in the scene before her. What's going on? I gestured for her to join us, my heart heavy. Girls, I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this. As I recounted the story again, Jessie's expression hardened. I knew it, she spat. I overheard Dad on the phone last week talking about some kid's soccer game. I thought maybe he was mentoring or something, but this is so much worse. Marie stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. We have to tell Lily and Laura. They deserve to know too. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of pride and sorrow at my daughter's strength. You're right, but let me talk to your father first. He needs to be the one to explain this to them. Just then my phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Working late. Don't wait up. Anger surged through me. Girls, change of plans. Get your sisters. We're having a family meeting, with or without your father. An hour later, all 4 of my daughters sat around the kitchen table, their faces a mix of shock, anger, and betrayal as they looked at the evidence of their father's double life. So, what do we do now? Lily asked, her voice small. Laura, always the more outspoken of the twins, stood up. I say we go meet him. Our brother. She stumbled over the word. Absolutely not. I started, but Marie cut me off. Mom, we have a right to know. He's our family too, whether we like it or not. I looked at my girls, seeing the determination in their eyes. They were right, of course. But the thought of them reaching out to this other family, this secret part of Mark's life, made my stomach churn. Okay, I said finally. But we do this together, as a family. The girls nodded, a newfound solidarity between them. As they huddled together, whispering plans, I slipped away to make a phone call. Jane? I said when she picked up. It's worse than we thought, much worse. As I filled her in, I watched my daughters through the kitchen doorway. They were huddled around Jesse's laptop, probably searching for information on their half-brother. Their faces were set with determination, and I realized with a start that this crisis had brought them closer together. What are you going to do? Jane asked. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the battle ahead. I'm going to protect my girls, and then I'm going to make Mark pay for every lie he's ever told us. As I hung up, Marie called out, Mom, we found him on social media. His name is Ethan. I walked back into the kitchen, my heart pounding. On the screen was a smiling boy with Mark's eyes, surrounded by a life we knew nothing about. A life that was about to collide with ours in ways I couldn't even begin to imagine. I paced the living room, my nerves frayed as I waited for the girls to return. They had insisted on meeting Ethan, their half-brother, despite my reservations. Now, as the afternoon sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The front door creaked open, and I whirled around. Marie entered first, her face unreadable. The others filed in behind her, a strange mix of emotions playing across their features. Well? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Marie took a deep breath. He's nice, Mom, really nice, and he had no idea about us either. Jessie nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. He thought he was an only child. Can you believe that? Dad's been lying to everyone. The twins, usually so bubbly and talkative, were uncharacteristically quiet. Laura spoke up first, her voice small. He looks just like Dad, Mom. It's weird. I sank onto the couch, my legs suddenly weak. Tell me everything. As the girls recounted their meeting with Ethan, I felt a storm of emotions brewing inside me. Anger at Mark for his deception, heartbreak for my daughters, and this boy who had been kept in the dark, and a fierce protectiveness that threatened to overwhelm me. What do we do now? Lily asked, her eyes wide and uncertain. Before I could answer, the front door slammed open. Mark stormed in, his face twisted with rage. What the hell were you thinking? He shouted, glaring at the girls. Ethan's mother called me in a panic. How dare you go behind my back like this? I stood, placing myself between Mark and our daughters. How dare we? How dare you, Mark? You've been lying to all of us for years. Mark's face paled, then flushed with anger. This is none of your business. What happened in the past? Stop it, Marie shouted, stepping forward. It is our business. He's our brother, whether you like it or not, and we have a right to know him. Mark turned to me, his eyes blazing. This is your doing, isn't it? Turning my own daughters against me? I felt something snap inside me. Years of trust, of love, of building a life together, all of it crumbled in an instant. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Get out of this house right now. You can't be serious, Mark sputtered. This is my home too. Not anymore, I replied, surprised by the steel in my voice. I want a divorce, Mark, and I'm going to fight for full custody of our girls. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. Then, to my surprise, Jessie spoke up. We want to live with Dad. I turned, shock coursing through me. What? Marie nodded, a determined look in her eyes. We've talked about it, Mom. We want to get to know Ethan better, and, well, we think we can handle living with Dad. I felt as if the floor had dropped out from under me. Girls, you can't be serious, after everything he's done. We know, Laura interrupted, but he's still our dad, and Ethan's our brother. We need to figure this out for ourselves. Mark looked triumphant, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. He hadn't expected this either. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. If that's what you want, I won't stop you, but know that I'm always here for you, no matter what. As the girls nodded, their faces a mix of determination and apprehension, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning of a new chapter. and I would do whatever it took to protect my daughters, even if it meant letting them go for now. I turned to Mark, my voice steady. You'd better take good care of them, because if you don't, there will be hell to pay. As Mark ushered the girls out, I caught Marie's eye. She gave me a small, reassuring smile, and I knew then that this wasn't over. My daughters were stronger than I'd ever imagined, and together we would weather this storm. The house felt eerily quiet without the girls. I wandered from room to room, touching their belongings, trying to make sense of the whirlwind that had torn through our lives. It had been 3 days since they left with Mark, and the silence was deafening. My phone buzzed, startling me. It was Jane. Anna, honey, how are you holding up? I sank onto Marie's bed, clutching one of her stuffed animals. I don't know, Jane. It feels like I'm in a nightmare I can't wake up from. Have you heard from the girls? I sighed. Just a few texts. They say they're fine, but something feels off. I can't shake the feeling that they're up to something. Jane's voice turned serious. Anna, I hate to add to your worries, but I've heard some rumors about Mark's other woman. My grip tightened on the stuffed animal. What kind of rumors? Apparently she's got quite a reputation. This isn't her first rodeo with married men. The information hit me like a punch to the gut. Oh God, Jane, what have I done? I let my girls go live with her. Now, don't panic, Jane said firmly. We need to approach this carefully. Have you spoken to a lawyer yet? I shook my head, then remembered she couldn't see me. No, I've been in such a daze. I should do that, shouldn't I? Absolutely. And Anna? I think it's time you had a real conversation with Mark. No more dancing around the truth. As if on cue, I heard the front door open. Mark's voice called out, Anna? Are you here? I have to go, I whispered to Jane. He's here. I made my way downstairs, steeling myself for the confrontation. Mark stood in the living room, looking haggard and uncomfortable. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice cold. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. We need to talk, Anna. About the girls, about everything. I crossed my arms. Fine, talk. Mark took a deep breath. I know I've made a mess of things, but you have to believe me. I never meant for any of this to happen. Ethan, he was a mistake, but I couldn't abandon him. So instead you abandoned us? I spat. You lied to me for years, Mark, to our daughters. I know, and I'm sorry, but the girls, they're struggling. They're acting out, fighting with Sarah? Sarah? Is that her name? I interrupted, feeling a fresh wave of pain. Mark nodded, looking miserable. Anna, I think they're trying to sabotage things. They're making life hell for Sarah and Ethan. I felt a mix of pride and concern for my daughters. Can you blame them? You've turned their world upside down. I know, but... Mark was cut off by the sound of his phone ringing. He glanced at it, his face paling. It's Sarah. I have to take this. As he stepped away to answer, I felt a surge of determination. I may have let my girls go, but I wasn't about to abandon them to this mess. I pulled out my own phone and dialed the number of a lawyer Jane had recommended. Hello, this is Anna Thompson. I need to discuss filing for divorce and fighting for custody of my children. Mark's voice rose in the background, sounding panicked. I turned to see him gesturing wildly, his face a mask of shock and anger. Anna, he said, his voice shaking as he ended his call. The girls are gone. They've run away. In that moment, everything else fell away. My daughters were out there somewhere, scared and alone. I met Mark's eyes, seeing my own fear reflected back at me. We need to find them, I said, my voice steady despite the terror gripping my heart. And when we do, I'm bringing them home, for good. As Mark nodded, looking lost and defeated, I realized this was the turning point. No more passivity, no more letting others dictate my life. It was time to fight for my family, on my terms. Let's go, I said, grabbing my keys. And Mark, when this is over, we're going to have a long talk about the future. All of us. My heart raced as I paced the living room, waiting for news. It had been 3 days since the girls ran away, and every minute felt like an eternity. Mark and I had been searching nonstop, calling friends, checking social media, and even hiring a private investigator. The same one who had uncovered Mark's secret life was now tasked with finding our daughters. The doorbell rang, and I practically flew to answer it. It was Jane, her face etched with worry. Any news? She asked, stepping inside. I shook my head, fighting back tears. Nothing. It's like they vanished into thin air. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Marie. Mom, We're okay, don't worry. We'll be home soon. Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by frustration. They're okay, I told Jane, showing her the message. But they won't tell me where they are. Jane squeezed my hand. At least they're safe. Have you told Mark? The mention of his name sent a fresh wave of anger through me. He's out looking. I'll let him know. As if summoned by our conversation, Mark burst through the front door, his face a mix of hope and desperation. Any word? I showed him the text, watching as he sagged with relief. Thank God, he muttered. This doesn't change anything, I said, my voice hard. When they come home, we're still getting divorced. Mark's face fell. Anna, please, can't we work this out for the girls? Before I could respond, my phone rang, an unknown number. With shaking hands, I answered. Hello? Mrs. Thompson? A gruff voice asked. This is Detective Ramirez. We've found your daughters. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Where are they? Are they okay? They're safe, ma'am, but there's been a complication. They're at the hospital. My knees buckled, and Jane rushed to steady me. Hospital? What happened? It seems they got into an altercation with another woman, Sarah Lawson. Do you know her? I felt the blood drain from my face as I looked at Mark. His expression of shock mirrored my own. We'll be right there, I managed to say before hanging up. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Mark kept trying to speak, but I shut him down each time. My mind was racing with possibilities, each one worse than the last. At the hospital, we were met by a stern-faced detective. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, your daughters are fine, just some minor bruises, but Miss Lawson is pressing charges for assault. Assault? I gasped. That's ridiculous. They're just children. The detective's expression softened slightly. I understand this is a difficult situation, but from what we've gathered, your eldest daughter, Marie, confronted Miss Lawson about her relationship with your husband. Things escalated from there. I turned to Mark, fury building inside me. This is all your fault. Your lies, your betrayal, it's destroying our family. Mark looked devastated. Anna, I never meant for any of this to happen. I'll fix it, I swear. Just then a nurse approached. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, your daughters are asking for you. As we followed her down the sterile hallway, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. I would do anything to protect my girls. We entered the room to find all four of my daughters huddled together on one bed. Their faces were tear-stained and bruised, but their eyes lit up when they saw me. Mom! Marie cried, reaching out for me. I rushed to embrace them, feeling their trembling bodies against mine. It's okay, I soothed. I'm here now, everything's going to be all right. As I held my girls, I caught sight of Mark hovering uncertainly in the doorway. His eyes met mine, pleading for forgiveness, for a chance to make things right. But as I looked at my daughters, I knew there was no going back. The life we had known was over. It was time to forge a new path, one that put my children first. Girls, I said softly, we're going home. All of us, and we're going to figure this out together. The relief on their faces was palpable. As we prepared to leave, I turned to Mark one last time. You can see them, but on my terms. This isn't over, Mark. Not by a long shot. The weeks following the hospital incident were a whirlwind of legal meetings, therapy sessions, and tense family dinners. I watched my girls struggle to adjust, their anger and hurt manifesting in ways I never expected. Marie, once my level-headed eldest, had become a powder keg of resentment. Jessie retreated into herself, while the twins vacillated between confusion and defiance. One particularly fraught evening, as I was clearing the dinner dishes, Marie stormed into the kitchen, her face flushed with anger. Mom, you won't believe what I found, she said, thrusting her phone at me. I wiped my hands and took the device, my stomach dropping as I read the screen. It was a social media post from Sarah, Mark's mistress, flaunting a new diamond bracelet. The caption read, "Thanks for the beautiful gift, babe. Can't wait for our getaway next week." He's still with her, Marie spat. After everything, he's still choosing her over us. I felt a surge of anger, quickly followed by a wave of exhaustion. Honey, your father's choices are his own. We can't. No, Marie interrupted. I'm not letting him get away with this. I've been doing some digging, Mom. Sarah's not who she says she is. My heart raced as Marie pulled up several articles on her phone. Sarah Lawson, it seemed, had a history of targeting wealthy married men. She'd been involved in multiple lawsuits and scandals over the years. We have to tell Dad, I said, my mind reeling. He needs to know what kind of person he's involved with. Marie's eyes glinted with a determination that both worried and impressed me. I have a better idea. The next day I found myself sitting in a cafe across from Sarah herself, my hands shaking as I nursed a lukewarm latte. Marie's plan was risky, but I had to admit it was clever. Thank you for meeting me, I said, forcing a smile. I think it's time we cleared the air. Sarah nodded, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her coffee cup. I agree, for the sake of the children, of course. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what came next. Actually, I wanted to talk about your past, Sarah. Your history with married men. Her face paled slightly, but she quickly regained her composure. I'm not sure what you mean. I think you do, I replied, sliding a folder across the table. Multiple lawsuits, allegations of extortion, it's quite a resume. Sarah's eyes darted around the cafe, her cool demeanor cracking. Where did you get this information? It doesn't matter, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. What matters is what you're going to do now. Just then, Mark walked into the cafe, his face a mask of confusion. Sarah, what's going on? I hadn't expected him to arrive so soon. Marie must have tipped him off earlier than planned. Sarah stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Mark, I can explain, she started, but I cut her off. No more explanations, Sarah. No more lies. I turned to Mark, my voice breaking slightly. She's been using you, Mark, just like she's used other men before. Mark's face cycled through a range of emotions, confusion, anger, betrayal. Is this true? He asked Sarah, his voice barely above a whisper. Before she could respond, the cafe door burst open again. This time, it was Ethan, Mark's son with Sarah, looking panicked and out of breath. Dad, he gasped. Mom's been lying to both of us. I found her emails. She's been planning to leave the country with all your money. The cafe fell silent, the tension palpable. I watched as Mark's world crumbled around him, feeling a mix of vindication and unexpected pity. Sarah, realizing she was cornered, made a desperate lunge for her purse. But Marie, who had been watching from a nearby table, was quicker. She grabbed the bag, spilling its contents across the floor, including a one-way plane ticket and a stack of cash. As chaos erupted in the cafe with Sarah shouting and Mark looking shell-shocked, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was the moment everything changed. The truth was out, messy and painful as it was. I met Mark's eyes across the room, seeing the devastation and regret etched in his face. There was no going back now. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. My girls and I would face it together, stronger than ever. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered her final verdict. I sat, back straight, hands clasped tightly in my lap as the words washed over me. Full custody, substantial alimony, child support until the girls reached adulthood. It was everything my lawyer had fought for, everything I knew my daughters deserved. I glanced at Mark, slumped in his seat across the aisle. The past few months had aged him dramatically. The financial strain of Sarah's betrayal, coupled with the legal battles, had left him a shell of his former self. As our eyes met, I saw a flicker of the man I'd once loved, remorseful, broken, but finally honest. Outside the courthouse, Mark approached us hesitantly. Anna, girls, I know I have no right to ask, but is there any way we can— Dad, stop, Marie interrupted, her voice firm but not unkind. We're not ready to forgive you, not yet, but maybe someday. The twins, Lily and Laura, nodded in agreement. Jessie, always the most sensitive, stepped forward and gave Mark a quick, awkward hug. We'll call you, okay? As Mark walked away, shoulders hunched, I felt a complex mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of pride in my daughter's strength and maturity. Jane was waiting for us at home, a celebratory dinner prepared. As we gathered around the table, I looked at the faces of my girls, tired but resilient. They had been through so much, yet here they were, still standing, still a family. Before we eat, I said, raising my glass, I want to say something. These past months have been the hardest of our lives. But look at us now. We're stronger, wiser, and more united than ever. I'm so proud of each of you, and I want you to know that no matter what happens, we'll always have each other. Tears glistened in the girls' eyes as we clinked glasses. Even Jane, usually so composed, dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. As we ate, the conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter, a sound I realized I hadn't heard in our home for far too long. Marie shared her college plans, Jessie talked about her art projects, and the twins regaled us with tales from their soccer team's latest victory. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, there was a soft knock at my door. I opened it to find all 4 girls standing there, pajama-clad and looking suddenly young and vulnerable. "Mom," Marie said, "can we sleep in here tonight? Like we used to when we were little." My heart swelled. "Of course, sweethearts. Come on in." As we settled into bed, a tangle of limbs and whispered conversations, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still wounds to heal, trust to rebuild. But in this moment, surrounded by the warmth and love of my daughters, I knew we would be okay. Just before drifting off to sleep, I heard Jessie whisper, "Mom?" "Yes, honey. Thank you for fighting for us, for not giving up." I hugged her close, feeling the others shift closer in response. "Always, my loves, always." In the quiet darkness of the room, I reflected on the journey we'd been through. The pain, the betrayal, the moments of doubt, they had all led us here. To this new beginning, this stronger version of our family. I thought of Mark, of the life we'd once shared, and felt a twinge of sadness for what was lost. But as I looked at my sleeping daughters, I knew that what we'd gained was far more precious. We had emerged from the storm not just survivors, but victors. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for growth and healing. But for now, in this perfect moment of peace and togetherness, I allowed myself to simply be grateful. Grateful for the strength we'd found, the bonds we'd forged, and the love that had seen us through. As sleep finally claimed me, I smiled. Whatever the future held, I knew one thing for certain: we would face it together, stronger and more resilient than ever before. I never imagined my mother-in-law's living room would become a battlefield, but here I was, staring down Joan as she hurled accusations at me like grenades. "You've bewitched my son." Joan's face was red with fury, her perfectly coiffed silver hair trembling with each accusation. "Peter was on track to take over the family business before you sank your claws into him." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Joan, I've done nothing of the sort. Peter made his own choices." "Choices?" she scoffed, cutting me off. "The only choice he made was marrying you, and look where that's gotten him." My hands clenched into fists at my sides. I'd endured months of her snide comments and barely veiled insults, but this was the last straw. "I love your son, Joan. I support him in everything he does. Why can't you see that?" Joan's eyes narrowed. "Love? Ha! You're nothing but a gold digger, Sarah. A nurse who thinks she can climb the social ladder by marrying into our family." The accusation stung like a slap across the face. I'd worked hard for my nursing degree, spent countless nights studying and sacrificing. To have it all dismissed so callously made my blood boil. "That's enough," I snapped, surprising even myself with the force of my words. "I've put up with your insults and your meddling for far too long. I'm here because I love Peter, not because of your family's money or status." Joan's mouth fell open in shock, but only for a moment. She recovered quickly, her voice dripping with venom. "How dare you speak to me that way in my own home? You ungrateful little—" "Mom? Sarah? What's going on?" Peter's voice cut through the tension as he appeared in the doorway, looking bewildered. I felt a flicker of hope. Surely now, with him here, things would calm down. But Joan was quicker. "Oh, Peter, darling." She rushed to his side, her voice suddenly syrupy sweet. "I was just having a little chat with Sarah about family values. It seems she doesn't quite understand our traditions." I gaped at her, stunned by how quickly she could switch gears. "Peter, that's not—" "Shh, dear," Joan interrupted, patting Peter's arm. "Why don't you go check on dinner? Sarah and I still have a few things to discuss." To my dismay, Peter hesitated only a moment before nodding. "All right, Mom. Just try to get along, okay?" And with that, he was gone, leaving me alone again with the she-wolf. Joan's saccharine smile vanished the instant Peter was out of earshot. "Now where were we?" She advanced on me, her voice low and menacing. "Ah, yes, I remember. You were just leaving." I blinked, caught off guard. "Leaving? But Peter and I—" "Are no longer welcome in my home," Joan finished, her tone brooking no argument. "I won't stand by and watch you ruin my son's life any longer. Get out, Sarah, and don't come back." For a moment, I was too stunned to move. This couldn't be happening, but as I looked into Joan's cold, unyielding eyes, I knew she meant every word. With trembling hands, I gathered my purse and coat. As I reached the front door, I turned back one last time. "This isn't over, Joan. Peter will hear about this." She smirked, triumph written all over her face. "Oh, I'm counting on it, dear. Run along now." The door slammed behind me with a finality that sent shivers down my spine. As I stood on the porch, the weight of what had just happened crashed over me. I was alone, cast out by my mother-in-law, with no idea where to go or what to do next. And somewhere in the house behind me, blissfully unaware, was my husband, the man I loved, who had once again failed to stand up for me when I needed him most. As I sat in my car, staring at the house I'd just been thrown out of, memories of how Peter and I met came flooding back. It seemed like a lifetime ago now, but the irony wasn't lost on me. We'd fallen in love in a hospital, a place of healing, only for our relationship to become so sick. I remember the day clearly. I was on my rounds, checking on patients in the cardiology ward. That's when I first saw him, Peter, sitting by his father's bedside, worry etched across his handsome face. "How's he doing?" I'd asked, checking the monitors. Peter had looked up, his blue eyes meeting mine. "Better, I think, thanks to nurses like you." From that moment, something sparked between us. Over the next few weeks, as his father recovered, Peter and I grew closer. Coffee in the cafeteria turned into dinner dates, and before I knew it, I was head over heels. 6 months later, Peter surprised me with a picnic in the park where we'd had our first real date. As we sat on the checkered blanket, he took my hands in his. "Sarah," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "these past months have been the happiest of my life. I've realized something important." My heart raced. Was this it? "I've quit my job at the bank," he continued. "Wait, what?" "I'm going to join the family business," Peter explained, his eyes shining with excitement. "And I want you by my side. Will you marry me?" He pulled out a ring, a beautiful diamond that must have cost a fortune. My head spun. Marriage, the family business, it was all happening so fast. "Peter, Are you sure about this, quitting your job?" His face fell slightly. "Don't you trust me, Sarah? This is a great opportunity. We'll be set for life." I hesitated, the first seeds of doubt taking root. But looking into his eager face, I pushed my concerns aside. "Yes," I heard myself say. "Yes, I'll marry you." His kiss was sweet, but as he slipped the ring onto my finger, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of wedding planning and adjusting to Peter's new role in his family's company. I tried to be supportive, but I couldn't help noticing how quickly he deferred to his parents' wishes, especially his mother's. "Darling," Joan had said one evening, her voice sickly sweet, "why don't you and Sarah move in with us after the wedding? It would be so much easier for Peter to learn the business." I opened my mouth to protest, but Peter beat me to it. "That's a great idea, Mom. What do you think, Sarah?" I forced a smile. I'm not sure. We haven't even discussed where we want to live yet." Joan's eyes narrowed. "Well, if you're truly committed to this family, Sarah, you'll see it's the sensible choice. Unless, of course, you have other motives for marrying my son?" The accusation hung in the air, sharp and ugly. I looked to Peter, expecting him to defend me, but he just stood there, silent. "I think it's a wonderful idea," I finally said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "We'd be happy to move in." Joan's triumphant smile made my stomach churn. As she bustled off to make arrangements, Peter pulled me close. "See, it'll be perfect. You'll get to know my family better, and they'll see what I see in you." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The ring on my finger suddenly felt heavy, a shackle rather than a symbol of love. As I sat in my car now, staring at the house that had become my prison, I realized that moment was when everything started to unravel. I'd ignored my instincts, pushed aside my doubts, all for the sake of love. But where had that love gone? Where was Peter now, when I needed him most? With a deep breath, I started the car. It was time to face the truth, about Peter, about our marriage, and about the choice I now had to make. I stood in the foyer of Joan and Richard's sprawling mansion, my suitcases at my feet. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading since agreeing to move in with Peter's parents. Joan descended the grand staircase, her eyes gleaming with barely concealed triumph. "Welcome home, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I hope you're ready to prove yourself." I forced a smile. "I'm not sure what you mean, Joan. I'm here because I love Peter." She waved her hand dismissively. Love is all well and good, but in this family we value more, tangible things. Her gaze swept over me, critical and cold. You'll need to show us you're not just after Peter's inheritance. My jaw clenched. I've never cared about money. Then you won't mind signing this little agreement, Joan interrupted, producing a document from seemingly nowhere. It's just a formality, really, to protect the family's interests. I took the paper, my hands shaking slightly as I read. It was a prenuptial agreement, but one that seemed heavily slanted in the family's favor. If Peter and I divorced, I'd walk away with nothing, not even my own savings. This is ridiculous, I sputtered. I won't sign this. Joan's eyes narrowed. Then perhaps you're not as committed to this family as you claim. What's going on? Peter's voice rang out as he entered the foyer. He looked between us, confusion etched on his face. Your mother wants me to sign a prenup, I explained, handing him the document. One that would leave me penniless if we ever split up. Peter scanned the paper, his brow furrowing. Mom, this seems a bit extreme. It's just to protect you, darling, Joan cooed. Surely Sarah understands that. If she truly loves you, she'll have no problem signing. I looked at Peter, silently pleading with him to stand up to his mother. But I saw the hesitation in his eyes, the way he glanced back at Joan. Maybe we should consider it, Sarah, he said softly, just to put everyone's minds at ease. My heart sank. This was the man I was supposed to spend my life with? Someone who couldn't even defend me against his own mother's machinations? Fine, I said, my voice tight. I'll sign it, but I want you to know, Joan, that this changes nothing. I'm here for Peter, not for your money. Joan's smile was triumphant as she handed me a pen. We'll see about that, won't we? As I scrawled my signature on the dotted line, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about proving myself anymore. It was about survival in a house that already felt more like a battlefield than a home. The weeks that followed were a blur of tension and unspoken hostility. Joan watched my every move, critiquing everything from the way I folded laundry to how I interacted with the household staff. Peter, for his part, seemed oblivious to the war being waged under his own roof. One evening, as we prepared for bed, I couldn't hold back anymore. Peter, do you even see what's happening here? I asked, my voice cracking. Your mother treats me like an intruder, and you do nothing. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. She's just protective, Sarah. Give her time, she'll come around. I stared at him, disbelief washing over me. Time? How much time does she need? We're getting married in 3 months. Peter's face hardened. Look, I'm caught in the middle here. Can't you just try to get along with her, for me? In that moment, I saw our future laid out before me. Years of tiptoeing around Joan, of Peter always choosing his mother over me, and I knew, with a clarity that terrified me, that I couldn't do it. I don't know if I can, I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. Peter's expression softened. He pulled me into an embrace, but it felt hollow, devoid of the comfort it once brought. We'll figure it out, he murmured. I promise. But as I lay awake that night, listening to Peter's steady breathing beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd made a terrible mistake. The question wasn't whether I could survive in this house. It was whether our love could survive Joan's machinations and Peter's inability to stand up for me. And for the first time since he'd proposed, I wasn't sure I knew the answer. The alarm blared at 4:30 a.m., jolting me awake. Another early shift at the hospital. I dragged myself out of bed, careful not to wake Peter. As I tiptoed downstairs, a light flicked on in the kitchen, startling me. You're up early, Joan said, her voice crisp. I stifled a groan. Early shift, I explained, reaching for the coffee pot. Joan's eyes narrowed. Again? Peter mentioned you've been working a lot lately. The hospital's short-staffed, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. I go where I'm needed. Joan hummed, disapproval etched on her face. And what about your duties here? The garden party is this weekend, and there's so much to prepare. I bit back a retort. The garden party, another of Joan's elaborate social events that I was expected to help organize. I'll do what I can after my shift, I promised, knowing full well it wouldn't be enough. Joan's lips thinned. See that you do. A wife's place is in the home, Sarah, especially when there are children to consider. I nearly choked on my coffee. Children? Joan, Peter and I aren't even married yet. Precisely my point, she sniffed. You're not getting any younger, dear. It's time to start thinking about giving Peter an heir. The words hit me like a slap. I set down my mug, hands shaking. That's not really your concern, Joan. Peter and I will decide when we're ready for children. Joan's eyes glittered dangerously. Everything in this family is my concern, including my future grandchildren. I left for work with Joan's words ringing in my ears. The shift was grueling. A multi-car pileup had the ER overflowing. By the time I got home, I was exhausted. But there was no rest to be had. Joan was waiting, a list of party preparations in hand. There you are, she said, thrusting the list at me. The florist needs confirming, and the caterer had questions about the menu. I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. Joan, I just worked a 12-hour shift. Can't this wait until tomorrow? Absolutely not, she snapped. The party is in 2 days. Really, Sarah, if you can't handle a simple event, how do you expect to manage a household? Or children, for that matter. That's enough, I exploded, weeks of pent-up frustration boiling over. I am not your servant, Joan. I'm a nurse, a professional, and my job saves lives. Joan's face turned cold. Your job, she spat, is to be a proper wife to my son, something you're clearly failing at. What's going on? Peter's voice cut through the tension. He looked between us, confusion evident on his face. Your mother seems to think my only value is as a baby-making machine, I said, my voice trembling with anger. Peter's eyes widened. Mom, is that true? Joan's demeanor instantly changed, her voice softening. Oh, Peter, I'm just concerned. Sarah works such long hours, and she's hardly ever home. How can she be a good wife to you like this? I waited for Peter to defend me, to tell his mother she was out of line, but he just stood there, silent and conflicted. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I can't do this anymore, I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. Peter finally spoke. Sarah, wait. But I was already moving, grabbing my keys and heading for the door. I needed space, needed to think. As I drove away from the house, tears blurring my vision, I realized I was at a crossroads. I loved Peter, but was love enough? Could I really spend the rest of my life caught between my career and Joan's impossible expectations? For the first time, I allowed myself to consider a future without Peter, without the suffocating presence of his family. And as terrifying as it was, a small part of me felt relieved. I pulled over, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. It was time to make a decision. Fight for my marriage or fight for myself. And as the sun set over the horizon, I wasn't sure which path I would choose. The annual Thompson family gathering was in full swing, the sprawling backyard of Joan and Richard's estate filled with laughter and chatter. I stood by the refreshment table, nursing a glass of lemonade, feeling like an outsider in my own family. Peter approached, a forced smile on his face. Everything okay, honey? You've been quiet all day. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. How could I tell him that every moment here felt like slow torture? Sarah, dear. Joan's voice cut through the crowd. She glided towards us, a group of well-dressed women in tow. Come, join us. We were just discussing the joys of motherhood. My stomach clenched. I knew where this was heading. Actually, Joan, I was about to... Nonsense, she interrupted, linking her arm through mine. Ladies, this is my daughter-in-law, Sarah, Peter's wife of... How long has it been now? 2 years, I said quietly. One of the women, a redhead with too much perfume, leaned in. And no little ones yet? You two better get busy. The group tittered with laughter. I felt my cheeks burn. Oh, we've been trying, Joan said, her voice dripping with false concern. Haven't we, Sarah? I stared at her, shocked. We hadn't been trying. Peter and I had agreed to wait, focusing on our careers first. What game was Joan playing? I stammered, looking to Peter for help. But he just stood there, silent and uncomfortable. Joan's eyes glittered with malice. You know, Sarah, if you're having trouble conceiving, there are specialists you can see. I'd be happy to recommend someone. The implication hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Joan wasn't just pressuring me for grandchildren. She was publicly questioning my fertility. Something inside me snapped. Actually, Joan, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, Peter and I haven't been trying. We decided to wait. A hush fell over the group. Joan's smile faltered for a moment before returning, razor sharp. Oh, and why is that, dear? Surely you're not putting your little nursing job ahead of starting a family? I felt Peter stiffen beside me. This was his chance to stand up for me, to put his mother in her place. I held my breath, waiting. But Peter just cleared his throat awkwardly. Mom, maybe this isn't the best time. No, Peter. I cut in, anger coursing through me. Let's have this out. Joan, my little nursing job saves lives. It's not just a career, it's a calling. And yes, right now, it's more important to me than having children. Gasps echoed around the circle. Joan's face turned red with fury. How dare you? After everything we've done for you. This family needs an heir. And if you can't provide one, then what? I challenged, stepping closer to her. You'll replace me with someone more compliant? Someone who'll bend to your every whim? Joan's eyes narrowed dangerously. Maybe I will. Clearly, you're not fit to be a part of this family. I looked around at the shocked faces, at Peter's conflicted expression, and suddenly everything became crystal clear. This wasn't a family, it was a prison, and I'd been locked in it for far too long. You're right, Joan, I said quietly. I'm not fit to be part of this family, not if it means giving up who I am. I turned to Peter, my heart breaking at the confusion in his eyes. I'm sorry, Peter, I can't do this anymore. Without another word, I walked away from the stunned group, through the house, and out the front door. As I got into my car, I could hear Joan's shrill voice calling after me, demanding I come back. But I didn't look back. I couldn't. For the first time in years, I was choosing myself, and as terrifying as the unknown future was, I knew one thing for certain. I was finally free. As I drove away from the estate, tears streaming down my face, I realized this wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the end of a book. And it was time for me to start writing a new one, on my own terms. The small apartment I'd rented felt like a sanctuary after the suffocating opulence of the Thompson estate. I'd been here for 2 weeks, ignoring the constant barrage of calls and messages from Peter. But as I stared at my phone, seeing his name flash across the screen for the 100th time, I knew I couldn't avoid this conversation forever. With a deep breath, I answered, "Hello, Peter." "Sarah, thank God." His voice cracked with relief. "Please, can we talk? Face to face?" Part of me wanted to refuse, to protect the fragile peace I'd found, but I owed him this much. "Okay," I agreed reluctantly. "The coffee shop on Main Street, in an hour." As I waited at a corner table, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug, I saw Peter enter. He looked haggard, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. My heart ached, despite everything. "Sarah," he breathed, sliding into the seat across from me. "I've been so worried. Please, come home." I shook my head. "Peter, I can't. You know that." "But why?" he pleaded. "We can work this out. I'll talk to Mom, make her understand." "It's not just about your mother," I interrupted. "It's about us. About who we've become together." Peter's face fell. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. "When was the last time you stood up for me, Peter? Against your mother, against anyone?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again, realization dawning in his eyes. "Exactly," I said softly. "We're not partners anymore. We're not even on the same team." "I can change," Peter insisted, reaching for my hand. "I'll do better, I promise." Just then my phone buzzed. A text from Joan. "Stop this childish behavior and come home immediately. We have your prenup to discuss." I showed Peter the message, watching as shame and frustration warred on his face. "She won't stop, will she?" I asked quietly. Peter's silence was answer enough. "I think." I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "I think we need to talk about divorce." The color drained from Peter's face. "No, Sarah, please, I love you." "I love you too," I admitted, tears welling in my eyes. "But sometimes love isn't enough." As if on cue, the cafe door burst open and Joan swept in, her face a mask of fury. "There you are," she hissed, marching to our table. "I will not allow you to throw away this marriage over a temper tantrum." I stood, anger replacing my sadness. "This isn't your decision, Joan, it's ours." "Oh, but it is," she sneered, producing a document from her designer handbag. "Or have you forgotten about this?" My blood ran cold as I recognized the prenup I'd signed. "What about it?" Joan's smile was predatory. "If you leave Peter, you leave with nothing, not a penny of your savings, not a stick of furniture, nothing." I felt the room spin. How could I have been so naive? "That's not possible," I whispered. "Oh, but it is," Joan gloated. "So unless you want to start over with absolutely nothing, I suggest you come home and start acting like a proper wife." I looked at Peter, silently begging him to intervene. But he just sat there, torn and paralyzed. In that moment, I knew. This was it. The point of no return. "Keep it," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Keep all of it. My freedom is worth more than any amount of money." Joan's triumphant expression faltered. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life," I replied, grabbing my purse. "Goodbye, Joan. Goodbye, Peter." As I walked out of the cafe, my heart pounding and my future uncertain, I felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. I had nothing, no money, no plan, no safety net. But for the first time in years, I had myself. And somehow, I knew that would be enough. Little did I know, as I stepped onto the bustling street, that this was just the beginning of a battle that would test every ounce of my strength and resilience. 5 years had passed since I'd walked away from Peter and the suffocating world of the Thompsons. I'd rebuilt my life, piece by painstaking piece. My nursing career had flourished, and I'd found a peace I never knew possible. But as I stood in my kitchen, staring at the letter in my hands, I felt that hard-won serenity crumbling. "Miss Sarah Thompson," it read, "you are hereby accused of theft of the Thompson family heirloom, a diamond necklace valued at $500,000. My hands shook as I read the rest of the letter, detailing Joan's accusations and threats of legal action. It was absurd. I hadn't set foot in that house since the day I left. But Joan's vindictiveness knew no bounds. I reached for my phone, ready to call David, the lawyer who'd helped me keep my assets during the divorce. But before I could dial, a sharp knock at the door made me jump. Peering through the peephole, my heart nearly stopped. Joan and Peter stood on my doorstep, their faces grim. For a moment I considered not answering, but I was done running. With a deep breath, I opened the door. "Well, well," Joan sneered, pushing past me into the apartment. "Living quite comfortably on your ill-gotten gains, aren't you?" I stood my ground, meeting her gaze. "I haven't stolen anything, Joan. You know that." Peter at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Sarah, please, just return the necklace and we can forget this whole thing." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Peter, I don't have your necklace. I never did." Joan's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Lies. You've always been jealous of our family's wealth. Stealing that necklace was your final act of revenge." "Revenge?" I laughed bitterly. "I left with nothing, Joan. I rebuilt my life from scratch. Why would I risk that for a necklace?" "Because you're a vindictive little gold digger," Joan spat, "and I'll see you in jail for this." My mind raced. This wasn't just about a necklace. This was Joan's endgame, her final attempt to destroy me. And Peter, my once loving husband, was letting it happen. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Both of you. Now." Joan smirked. "Or what? You'll call the police? Go ahead. Let's see who they believe, the respected Thompson family or the nurse who abandoned her husband." In that moment, something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up anger and hurt came rushing to the surface. "You want to talk about abandonment, Joan? How about how you abandoned your son to your twisted idea of legacy? How you poisoned our marriage with your constant meddling?" I turned to Peter, tears stinging my eyes. "And you? You stood by and watched it all happen. You never once chose me over her. Even now, you're here, accusing me of theft instead of standing up to your mother." Peter flinched, guilt flashing across his face. But Joan was undeterred. "Enough of this nonsense. Either give us the necklace, or we'll have you arrested right now." My heart pounded. I had worked so hard to build this new life, and now it was all at risk. But I refused to let Joan win. Not again. "Do your worst," I challenged, meeting Joan's gaze. "I have nothing to hide." Joan's triumphant smile sent chills down my spine. She pulled out her phone, presumably to call the police. This was it, the moment that could destroy everything I'd built. But just as Joan's finger hovered over the call button, a key turned in the lock. The door swung open, revealing a tall, handsome man holding a baby carrier. "Sarah, honey, I'm home early. I thought we could." He stopped short, taking in the scene before him. Joan and Peter stared, open-mouthed. I felt a surge of strength as I moved to stand beside the man I now called my husband. "David," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "I think it's time you met my former mother-in-law." The room fell silent as David stepped inside, gently setting down the baby carrier. Our daughter, Lily, gurgled happily, oblivious to the tension surrounding her. Joan's face contorted with shock and fury. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice shrill. David's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. "I believe I should be asking that question," he said coolly. "Why are you in our home, threatening my wife?" Peter stared at the baby, then at me, his face a mixture of hurt and disbelief. "Sarah, you're married? And you have a child?" I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze steadily. "Yes, Peter, I moved on. I found happiness, real happiness." Joan, recovering from her initial shock, sneered, "How convenient. A lawyer for a husband. Did you plan this, Sarah? Set us up for some sort of trap?" David stepped forward, his presence commanding. "Mrs. Thompson, I presume. I've heard a lot about you. None of it good, I'm afraid." "How dare you?" Joan sputtered. "Do you know who we are?" "I know exactly who you are," David replied calmly. "You're the people who have been harassing my wife with baseless accusations of theft, and now you've invaded our home with threats of arrest. I should warn you, that's grounds for a restraining order." Joan's face paled. "We have every right to reclaim our stolen property." "What property?" I interjected, my patience wearing thin. "I've told you I don't have your necklace. I never did." Peter, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Mom, where exactly did you last see the necklace?" Joan whirled on him. "What does that matter? She took it." "But when?" Peter pressed. "Because I remember you wearing it at Aunt Margaret's birthday party. That was months after Sarah left." The room fell silent as the implication of Peter's words sank in. Joan's face flushed red, then drained of all color. I must have been mistaken," she stammered. David's voice was steel. "Mrs. Thompson, false accusations of theft are a serious matter. Should we pursue this legally, I assure you, it won't end well for you." Joan's shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of her. For the first time, I saw her not as the terrifying matriarch, but as a sad, bitter woman clinging to control. Peter turned to me, his eyes filled with regret. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I should have known. I should have stood up for you years ago." I felt a wave of emotions, anger, sadness, and finally, pity. "Yes, you should have, Peter, but it's in the past now." David moved to stand beside me, wrapping an arm around my waist. "I think it's time for you both to leave," he said firmly. As Joan and Peter shuffled towards the door, I felt a sudden urge to say one last thing. "Joan," I called out. She turned, her eyes wary. "I hope you find peace someday, and Peter, I hope you find the strength to live your own life." The door closed behind them, and suddenly the apartment was quiet except for Lily's soft coos. I sagged against David, the adrenaline leaving my body. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, cradling my face in his hands. I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. "I am now. Thank you for being here." David smiled, kissing me gently. "Always." As we stood there, our daughter gurgling happily in her carrier, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The ghosts of my past had finally been laid to rest. "David," I said, a smile spreading across my face, "there's something I need to tell you." He looked at me quizzically. "What is it?" I took his hand and placed it on my stomach. "We're going to need a bigger apartment. Lily's going to be a big sister." David's eyes widened with joy, and as he pulled me into a fierce embrace, I knew that this love, this family, this life we'd built together was all I'd ever needed. The journey had been long and painful, but standing here, in the arms of the man I loved, with one child beside us and another on the way, I knew that every step had been worth it. This was my happily ever after, hard-won and infinitely precious. And as David and I looked down at our daughter, planning for our future with excitement and love, I silently thanked the challenges that had brought me here. They had made me stronger, wiser, and ultimately had led me to the life I was always meant to live. The ultrasound screen flickered to life, a grainy black and white image pulsing before my eyes. I gripped the edge of the exam table, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and anxiety. This was it, our first glimpse of our baby. "Everything looks great, Mrs. Pearson," the technician said, her voice warm and reassuring. "Would you like me to print out a picture for you and your husband?" I swallowed hard, fighting back the lump in my throat. "Just me today," I managed to say. "My husband couldn't make it." The technician's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Of course, I'll print 2 copies for you to take home." As I left the clinic, clutching the precious images in my hand, I couldn't shake the feeling of disappointment that threatened to overwhelm me. Ethan had promised he'd be here. He'd sworn up and down that nothing would keep him from this moment. Yet here I was, alone again. I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over Ethan's name. Should I call him? Tell him what he'd missed? But what was the point? He probably wouldn't even pick up. Instead, I dialed my best friend Sarah, answering on the first ring. The baby's perfect, I trying to inject some enthusiasm into my voice. Healthy and right on track. And Ethan? I sighed. MIA. Again. Sarah's sharp intake of breath crackled through the phone. Oh, Audrey, I'm so sorry. What did he say when you called him? I didn't, I admitted. What's the use? He's probably neck-deep in some project oblivious to the world around him. You need to talk to him, Aud. This isn't right. I knew she was right, but the thought of another confrontation with Ethan made my stomach churn. I will. Tonight, I promise. As I pulled into our driveway, I steeled myself for what was to come. The house was dark, no sign of life within. I shouldn't have been surprised, but disappointment hit me like a punch to the gut. I flicked on the lights, the emptiness of our home suddenly oppressive. How had it come to this? Ethan and I used to be a team, partners in everything. Now I felt like I was navigating this pregnancy alone. The clock ticked past 7, then 8. By 9, I'd given up on dinner, picking at a bowl of cereal as I scrolled through my phone. The ultrasound pictures sat on the kitchen counter, a bittersweet reminder of the day's events. Finally, at 10:30, I heard the garage door rumble open. Ethan's footsteps echoed through the house, growing louder as he approached the kitchen. Hey, he said, his voice weary. Sorry I'm late. The Johnson account is... You missed the ultrasound, I cut him off, my voice sharper than I'd intended. Ethan froze, his eyes widening as realization dawned. That was today? Oh God, Audrey, I'm so sorry, I completely forgot. Forgot, I echoed, disbelief coloring my tone. How could you forget? We've had this appointment on the calendar for weeks. He ran a hand through his hair, looking lost. I've been swamped at work. You know how important this account is for the firm. More important than our baby? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's face crumpled. Of course not. I got caught up. It won't happen again, I promise. But even as the words left his mouth, I knew they were empty. How many promises had he broken in the past few months? How many times had I been left waiting, hoping he'd show up? I stood up, suddenly unable to bear his presence. I'm going to bed, I said, brushing past him. Audrey, wait, Ethan called after me. Can we talk about this? I paused at the foot of the stairs, turning to face him. What's there to talk about, Ethan? You weren't there. Again, I think that says it all. As I climbed the stairs, leaving Ethan standing alone in the kitchen, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. And for the first time since we'd learned I was pregnant, I found myself wondering if I was ready to face parenthood alone. The weeks following the ultrasound incident were a blur of tense silences and half-hearted apologies. Ethan tried. I'll give him that. He brought home flowers, attempted to cook dinner with disastrous results, and even managed to make it to our next doctor's appointment. But something had shifted between us, a chasm opening where there was once solid ground. One particularly rough morning, as I battled another bout of morning sickness, I heard Ethan's footsteps approaching the bathroom. Audrey, you okay in there? His voice was muffled through the door. I wiped my mouth, fighting back tears of frustration. I'm fine, I managed to croak out. All right, well, I've got to head to the office. Big presentation today. You'll be okay? I stared at the closed door, disbelief washing over me. Sure, Ethan. Go. I'll be just fine. The sound of his retreating footsteps felt like a physical blow. I sank to the cool tile floor, one hand resting on my slightly swollen belly. Looks like it's just you and me, little one, I whispered. Later that day, I found myself in my home office, trying to focus on work. My business, a small but growing marketing firm, had been my pride and joy. Now it felt like just another weight on my shoulders. The phone rang, startling me out of my daze. It was my mother. Audrey, honey, how are you feeling? I opened my mouth to say fine, but what came out instead was a choked sob. Oh, sweetheart, my mom's voice softened. What's wrong? And just like that, everything I'd been holding back for weeks came pouring out. Ethan's absence, my fears about the pregnancy, the loneliness that seemed to permeate every corner of my life. Why don't you come stay with us for a few days? Mom suggested when I'd finally run out of words. Your father and I would love to have you. The offer was tempting, but I hesitated. I don't know, Mom. Ethan will understand, she said firmly. You need support right now, Audrey. Let us help. That evening, when Ethan finally came home, I was packing a small suitcase. "What's going on?" he asked, confusion etched across his face. "I'm going to stay with my parents for a few days," I said, not meeting his eyes. "What? Why?" I whirled to face him, sudden anger flaring. "Because I can't do this anymore, Ethan. I can't sit in this house, feeling alone and scared, while you bury yourself in work. Audrey, I'm trying." "Are you?" I shot back. "Because from where I'm standing, it doesn't look like you're trying at all. It looks like you're running away." Ethan's face hardened. "That's not fair. I'm working hard to provide for our family. We need more than money, Ethan. We need you, I need you." "So your solution is to run to Mommy and Daddy?" he scoffed. The words hit me like a slap. "At least they're there for me," I said, my voice low and trembling. Ethan's eyes widened, realizing he'd gone too far. "Audrey, I didn't mean. Save it." I cut him off, zipping up my suitcase. "I'll be at my parents'. Call me when you're ready to be a partner in this marriage again." I brushed past him, suitcase in hand, fighting back tears as I made my way to the car. As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw Ethan standing in the doorway, watching me go. For a moment, I thought he might come after me, might try to stop me. He didn't. The drive to my parents' house was a blur. As by the time I pulled into their driveway, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. The front door opened before I could even get out of the car, my mother's worried face appearing in the warm light spilling from inside. "Oh, honey," she said, wrapping me in a hug as soon as I was close enough. "It's going to be okay?" And for the first time in weeks, surrounded by the familiar scents and sounds of my childhood home, I felt like maybe, just maybe, it would be. The days at my parents' house blurred together, a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. Mom fussed over me, making sure I ate properly and rested, while Dad kept me distracted with his corny jokes and endless stories about his glory days. It felt like stepping back in time, before the complications of adulthood had set in. One morning, as I sat on the porch swing, sipping decaf and watching the neighborhood come to life, Mom joined me. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" she asked, her eyes searching my face. I sighed, resting a hand on my growing belly. "Better, I think. It's been nice to just breathe for a while." She nodded, patting my knee. "Have you talked to Ethan?" The mention of his name sent a jolt through me. "He's called a few times, left messages." "And?" I shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "I'm not ready yet." Mom was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "You can't avoid him forever, Audrey. You're having a baby together." Her words hit me like a bucket of cold water, reality crashing back in. Before I could respond, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway caught our attention. My heart leaped into my throat as I recognized Ethan's SUV. But it wasn't just Ethan. As the car doors opened, I saw his parents, Veronica and Jonathan, emerge as well. "Did you know they were coming?" I hissed at my mom. She shook her head, looking as surprised as I felt. "Your father must have called them." I stood up, suddenly feeling exposed in my oversized t-shirt and leggings. Ethan approached first, his face a mask of concern and regret. "Audrey," he said, his voice cracking slightly, "can we talk?" I nodded stiffly, leading him inside to the living room. Veronica and Jonathan followed, exchanging awkward greetings with my parents. Once we were all seated, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. It was Veronica who finally broke it. "Audrey, dear," she began, her voice gentle, "we're so sorry about everything that's been happening. Ethan told us about how things have been." I glanced at Ethan, who was staring at his hands, looking more defeated than I'd ever seen him. Jonathan cleared his throat. "Son, why don't you tell Audrey what you told us?" Ethan looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "I've been an idiot, Audrey. I got so caught up in trying to prove myself at work, to be the provider I thought I needed to be, that I forgot what really matters." He paused, swallowing hard. "You matter. Our baby matters, and I'm so sorry for making you feel alone." I felt tears pricking at my eyes, a mix of relief and lingering hurt washing over me. "It's not just about being alone, Ethan. It's about feeling like we're not partners anymore, like I'm facing all of this by myself." "I know," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "and I want to change that. I've talked to my boss about cutting back my hours, about working from home more. I want to be there for you, for every appointment, every milestone, if you'll let me." I looked around the room at the hopeful faces of our parents, then back to Ethan. "I want to believe you," I said slowly. But words aren't enough anymore. I need to see action. Ethan nodded eagerly. Absolutely, whatever it takes, Audrey, I'll prove it to you. As we continued to talk, hashing out plans and promises, I felt a cautious hope blooming in my chest. But there was still a nagging doubt, a fear that we'd fall back into old patterns. Later that night, as I lay in my childhood bed, I placed both hands on my belly, feeling the slight flutter of movement within. "What do you think, little one?" I whispered. "Should we give Daddy another chance?" The baby kicked in response, and I couldn't help but smile. Maybe, just maybe, we could make this work after all. But as I drifted off to sleep, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered a warning. Trust, once broken, is not easily mended. The drive home from my parents' house was filled with a nervous energy. Ethan and I had spent the past week rebuilding our connection, talking late into the night about our fears, hopes, and expectations for our growing family. His promises of change seemed sincere, but a part of me remained guarded, waiting to see if his actions would match his words. As we pulled into our driveway, Ethan reached over and squeezed my hand. "Welcome home, love," he said, a tentative smile on his face. I returned the smile, trying to ignore the flutter of anxiety in my chest. It's good to be back. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of doctor's appointments, birthing classes, and nursery preparations. True to his word, Ethan was present for every moment, his enthusiasm infectious. I found myself slowly letting my guard down, allowing hope to bloom once more. One evening, as we sat on the couch reviewing our birth plan, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his brow furrowing. "Everything okay?" I asked, noticing his sudden tension. He hesitated before answering. "It's work. There's a crisis with the Johnson account. They're asking me to fly out to Chicago tomorrow." My heart sank. "Tomorrow? But we have our LeMay's class and the nursery furniture is being delivered." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, looking torn. I know, but this account is huge, Audrey. If we lose it..." I felt a familiar anger rising. "So what? All those promises about putting family first were just talk?" "Of course not," he said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "It's just one trip. I'll be back before you know it." I stood up, suddenly feeling suffocated. "Go then. Do what you have to do." "Audrey, please," Ethan pleaded. "Don't be like this. I'm trying." "Are you?" I shot back. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks an awful lot like before." Before Ethan could respond, a sharp pain ripped through my abdomen. I gasped, doubling over. "Audrey!" Ethan was at my side in an instant, his face pale with worry. "What's wrong?" "I don't know," I managed through gritted teeth. "Something's not right." The next few hours passed in a blur of ambulance sirens, hospital corridors, and frantic doctors. By the time I was wheeled into the delivery room, I was delirious with pain and fear. "It's too early," I kept saying, gripping Ethan's hand so tightly I thought I might break it. "She's not ready." But ready or not, our daughter was determined to make her entrance into the world. After what felt like an eternity of pushing and pain, a tiny, angry cry filled the room. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, holding up our impossibly small daughter. "Harper," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Her name is Harper." As the nurses whisked her away to the NICU, I turned to Ethan. His face was a mix of joy and terror, mirroring my own emotions. "She's so small," he said, his voice cracking. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. In that moment, all our previous arguments seemed trivial. We were parents now, united in our love and fear for this tiny human we'd created. The next few days were a roller coaster of emotions. Harper was a fighter, growing stronger each day, but the sight of her in the incubator, hooked up to various machines, was almost more than I could bear. Ethan never left my side, canceling his trip and delegating the Johnson account to a colleague. He spent hours by Harper's incubator, talking softly to her, promising her the world. As I watched them together, I felt a renewed sense of commitment to our family. We'd been given a second chance, and I was determined not to waste it. But life, I was learning, had a way of throwing curveballs when you least expected them, and our biggest challenge was yet to come. The first few months of motherhood were a blur of sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and a love so fierce it took my breath away. Harper was thriving. Her premature birth, nothing but a distant memory, as she grew into a happy, chubby-cheeked baby. But as I settled into my new role as a mother, I found myself struggling to keep all the plates spinning. One particularly chaotic morning, I was trying to feed Harper while simultaneously participating in a conference call for my business. Ethan had left for work before dawn as usual, leaving me to juggle everything alone. "Yes, Mr. Donovan, I understand the importance of the deadline," I said into my headset, my voice strained as I attempted to spoon pureed carrots into Harper's resistant mouth. "I assure you, we'll have the proposal ready by—" Suddenly, Harper's tiny hand knocked the spoon, sending orange goop flying across my white blouse. I gasped, momentarily forgetting I was on the call. "Miss Pearson? Is everything all right?" Mr. Donovan's voice crackled through the headset. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. "Yes, I'm sorry. Just a small mishap," as I was saying. But Harper chose that moment to let out an ear-piercing wail, drowning out my words. I felt my face flush with embarrassment and frustration. "Perhaps we should reschedule," Mr. Donovan said, his tone cool and professional. "When you're less distracted." The call ended abruptly, leaving me in stunned silence. Harper continued to cry, orange carrots smeared across her face and my ruined blouse. I felt tears welling up in my own eyes as the weight of everything came crashing down on me. That evening, when Ethan finally came home, I was at my breaking point. "How was your day?" he asked, loosening his tie as he walked into the living room where I sat, surrounded by baby toys and work files. I looked up at him, too exhausted to even muster anger. Awful. I lost a potential client because I couldn't manage a simple phone call without Harper interrupting. I'm behind on 3 projects, the house is a mess, and I can't remember the last time I showered. Ethan's face fell. "I'm sorry, Audrey. Is there anything I can do to help?" "Now you ask," I said, my voice rising. "Where were you this morning when I needed help? Or yesterday? Or the day before that?" "I've been working, Audrey. You know how important this new project is," Ethan defended. "And what about our project?" I gestured to Harper, sleeping peacefully in her playpen. "What about our family?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, looking conflicted. "I'm trying, Audrey. I really am. But someone has to provide for this family." "And what am I doing?" I shot back. "Playing house? I'm trying to run a business and be a full-time mother with zero support from you." Our raised voices stirred Harper, who began to fuss. I moved to pick her up, but Ethan beat me to it. "I've got her," he said softly, cradling our daughter against his chest. "Why don't you take a break? Go take that shower. Maybe get some rest." I wanted to argue, to make him understand how unfair it all was, but the fight had drained out of me. I nodded silently and headed for the bathroom. As the hot water washed over me, I let the tears flow freely. Something had to give. I couldn't keep going like this, stretched thin between my roles as mother, entrepreneur, and wife. Stepping out of the shower, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked tired, defeated. This wasn't the Audrey I knew, the strong, independent woman who had built a successful business from the ground up. In that moment, I made a decision. Things had to change, and if Ethan wasn't willing to step up, I would have to take matters into my own hands. As I dressed, my mind raced with possibilities. It was time to reclaim my life, my career, and my sense of self. Little did I know, the universe had its own plans, and the true test of our marriage was just around the corner. The doorbell rang just as I was attempting to coax a fussy Harper into eating her dinner. Sighing, I wiped my hands on my stained apron and made my way to the front door, bouncing Harper on my hip. To my surprise, Veronica and Jonathan stood on the porch, arms laden with takeout bags. "Surprise!" Veronica chirped, her smile faltering slightly as she took in my disheveled appearance. "We thought you could use a break and some company." I blinked, momentarily stunned. That's so thoughtful. Please, come in." As we settled in the living room, the aroma of Italian food filling the air, I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. It had been so long since anyone had done something kind for me, something that wasn't related to the baby or work. "Where's Ethan?" Jonathan asked, glancing around the room. I swallowed hard. "Working late, again." Veronica and Jonathan exchanged a look that spoke volumes. "Audrey, dear," Veronica began, her voice gentle. "How are you really doing?" The question, so simple yet so loaded, broke something inside me. Before I knew it, I was sobbing, spilling out all my frustrations and fears. Harper, sensing my distress, began to wail as well. Jonathan quickly took Harper, soothing her with a practiced ease that made my heart ache. Veronica wrapped her arm around me, her presence comforting in a way I hadn't realized I needed. "I'm so sorry," I hiccuped, embarrassed by my outburst. "I don't know what came over me." "Oh, honey," Veronica said, her eyes filled with understanding. "You have nothing to apologize for. We had no idea things were this bad." As we talked over dinner with Harper now peacefully asleep, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. Veronica and Jonathan listened without judgment, offering support and advice. "We'll talk to Ethan," Jonathan promised, his usually jovial face serious. "This isn't fair to you or Harper. He needs to step up." I nodded, grateful for their support but also wary. "I've tried talking to him. He always promises to do better, but nothing ever changes." Veronica squeezed my hand. "Let us handle it. You focus on taking care of yourself and this precious granddaughter of ours." As they were leaving, Veronica pulled me into a tight hug. "Remember, you're not alone in this. We're here for you, always." Their visit left me feeling both comforted and conflicted. On one hand, their support meant the world to me. On the other, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was betraying Ethan by airing our dirty laundry to his parents. Later that night, as I was cleaning up the kitchen, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Working late again. Don't wait up." I stared at the message, a familiar mix of disappointment and anger rising in my chest. Without thinking, I dialed his number. "Audrey?" Ethan's voice came through, sounding distracted. "Is everything okay?" "No, Ethan, everything is not okay," I said, my voice trembling. "Your parents came over tonight. They could see how much I'm struggling. Why can't you?" There was a long pause. "My parents were there? Why didn't you tell me?" "When, Ethan? When should I have told you? Between your late nights and early mornings, when exactly do we talk anymore?" I heard muffled voices in the background, then Ethan's voice, tense and low. "I can't do this right now, Audrey. We'll talk when I get home." The line went dead before I could respond. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling more alone than ever. As I climbed into our cold, empty bed that night, I made a decision. Tomorrow I would start looking for a nanny. If Ethan wouldn't help, I'd find someone who would. I refused to let my business or my sanity suffer any longer. Little did I know, the next 24 hours would bring a revelation that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my marriage and force me to confront the hardest decision of my life. The front door slammed, jolting me awake. I glanced at the clock, 2:37 a.m. Ethan stumbled into our bedroom, reeking of alcohol and cologne that wasn't mine. "Where have you been?" I demanded, sitting up in bed. Ethan's eyes, bloodshot and unfocused, narrowed at me. "What? Are you my mother now?" "No, I'm your wife and the mother of your child," I shot back, anger rising in my chest. "The wife you've been neglecting and the child you barely see." He scoffed, fumbling with his tie. "Oh, here we go again. Poor Audrey, always the victim." His words hit me like a slap. "Victim? Is that what you think this is about?" "I think it's about you not understanding the pressure I'm under," Ethan slurred. "I'm out there providing for this family while you—" "While I what?" I interrupted, my voice dangerously low. "While I run a business and take care of our daughter single-handedly?" Ethan waved dismissively. "Your parents were here, weren't they? Bet you all had a grand time talking about what a terrible husband and father I am." I got out of bed, my whole body shaking with rage and hurt. "They came because they care, Ethan. Because they can see what this is doing to me, to us." "Oh, spare me the dramatics," Ethan sneered. "You've got it so hard, don't you? Living in this nice house, not having to worry about money." "Money?" I laughed bitterly. "You think that's what this is about? When was the last time you held your daughter, Ethan? When was the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about work or schedules?" Ethan opened his mouth to retort, but at that moment, his phone buzzed loudly on the nightstand. We both froze, staring at the device. Before I could react, Ethan lunged for it, but in his inebriated state, he fumbled and the phone clattered to the floor between us. I snatched it up, my heart pounding. A text notification lit up the screen. "Caroline, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Last night was amazing." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I looked up at Ethan, whose face had drained of all color. "Audrey," he began, his voice suddenly sober. "I can explain." "Explain," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Explain what, Ethan? How you've been cheating on me? How long has this been going on?" Ethan reached for me, but I recoiled. "It's not what you think. Caroline is just—" Don't, I cut him off, holding up a hand. Don't you dare lie to me. Not now. As if on cue, Harper's cries echoed through the baby monitor. The sound snapped me out of my shock, and I moved towards the door. Where are you going? Ethan asked, panic edging into his voice. To take care of our daughter, I replied coldly. Something you clearly haven't been interested in doing. I spent the rest of the night in the nursery, cradling Harper and trying to make sense of my shattered world. By the time dawn broke, I had cried myself out, leaving nothing but a hollow ache in my chest. When I finally emerged, Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table, head in his hands. He looked up as I entered, his eyes red-rimmed and pleading. Audrey, please, he began. We need to talk about this. I stared at him. This man I thought I knew, this man I had loved and trusted. In that moment, I felt something inside me harden. Yes, we do, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. But not now. Right now, I need you to leave. Leave? Ethan echoed, disbelief coloring his tone. This is my house too, Audrey. I met his gaze unflinchingly. And this is my life, Ethan. A life you've been lying to for God knows how long. So yes, you need to leave. Now. As Ethan gathered some belongings, moving like a man in a daze, I stood in the kitchen, Harper on my hip, feeling both terrified and strangely calm. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The days following Ethan's departure blurred together in a haze of tears, sleepless nights, and endless questions. I moved through our house like a ghost, tending to Harper on autopilot while my mind raced with memories and doubts. On the third day, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Veronica and Jonathan standing there, their faces etched with concern and something else, shame. We know, Veronica said softly, pulling me into a tight embrace. Ethan told us everything. Those words broke the dam I'd been desperately trying to hold back. I collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Jonathan gently guided us inside, closing the door behind us. Once I'd calmed down enough to speak, Ethan's parents shared what they knew. The affair had indeed been going on for over a year, starting when I was just a few months pregnant. Caroline was Ethan's assistant, young and ambitious. Everything I used to be before motherhood had consumed my life. We're so sorry, Audrey, Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. We had no idea, if we'd known. I shook my head, wiping away tears. It's not your fault. I didn't know either. Veronica squeezed my hand. What do you need from us? Whatever it is, we're here for you and Harper. Their unwavering support, despite the circumstances, touched me deeply. In that moment, I realized I had a choice to make. I could let this betrayal destroy me, or I could use it as a catalyst for change. I began, my voice growing stronger with each word. I think I need to start over, for myself and for Harper. Over the next few weeks, with Veronica and Jonathan's help, I began to rebuild my life. They offered financial support, allowing me to hire a part-time nanny so I could refocus on my business. More importantly, they stood by me as I made the difficult decision to separate from Ethan permanently. When Ethan finally came to collect the rest of his things, I was ready. He stood in my living room, looking lost and remorseful. Audrey, I know I've made terrible mistakes, he began, but I love you and Harper. We can work through this, can't we? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. No, Ethan, we can't. What you did, it's not just about the affair. It's about the months of neglect, the broken promises, the way you made me feel like I was failing as a wife and mother when you were the one who'd checked out of our marriage. Ethan's face crumpled. I never meant to hurt you. I got caught up in work, in feeling important, and I lost sight of what really mattered. But I want to make it right. Please, give me another chance. For a moment I wavered. The part of me that still loved him, that remembered the man he used to be, wanted to say yes. But then I thought of Harper, of the example I wanted to set for her. I'm sorry, Ethan, but no, I said firmly. I deserve better than this. Harper deserves better. And honestly, you need to be better. Not for us, but for yourself. As Ethan left for the last time, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months I felt hope. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work and my role as Harper's mother with renewed vigor. My business began to thrive again, and I found a balance I never thought possible. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset with Harper in my arms, I made a silent promise to myself and my daughter. We would never again compromise our self-respect or happiness for anyone. We were strong, we were resilient, and we had each other. As if sensing my thoughts, Harper looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes and smiled. In that moment, I knew we would be okay. More than okay, we would thrive. The future stretched out before us, full of possibilities and hope. It wasn't the life I had planned, but as I hugged my daughter close, I realized it was the life we needed. We were writing our own story now, and it was going to be beautiful. I trudged up the driveway, my feet aching from another double shift at the diner. The porch light flickered, casting eerie shadows across our once pristine lawn. I paused, fumbling for my keys, when I heard Mason's voice drifting through the open window. "Don't worry, Lily, Emma won't suspect a thing. I've got it all planned out." My heart skipped a beat. Lily? Our next-door neighbor? I crept closer, straining to hear more. 2 weeks in Cancun, just you and me, and the kids, of course. It'll be perfect. The keys slipped from my trembling fingers, clattering on the concrete. I froze, praying Mason hadn't heard. After a moment of silence, his voice continued, softer now. I know, but Emma's been working so much, she won't even notice we're gone. Trust me, babe." "Babe?" My vision blurred as tears welled up. I snatched my keys and stumbled back down the driveway, desperate for air. "Emma? Is that you?" I whirled around to see Haley, our 8-year-old daughter, peering out the front door. Forcing a smile, I called out, "Hey, sweetie, I'll be right in." "Daddy's on the phone," she said, her brow furrowed. "He told me not to bother him." "It's okay, honey. Go on back inside. I'll be there in a minute." As Haley disappeared, I leaned against my beat-up Corolla, trying to steady my breathing. How long had this been going on? And a trip to Cancun? With my hard-earned money? I squared my shoulders and marched toward the house. Time to face the music. Mason was lounging on the couch, phone pressed to his ear, when I walked in. He barely glanced up. "Gotta go, Mom. Emma's home." He hung up, tossing the phone aside. "Hey, babe. How was work?" "Fine," I said, my voice tight. "Who were you talking to?" He shrugged, reaching for the remote. "Just my mom. You know how she likes to chat." "Really? Because I could have sworn I heard you say Lily." Mason's hand froze midair. He turned to me, his face a mask of innocence. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Mason. I heard you making plans for Cancun, with Lily." He stood up, towering over me. "You were eavesdropping? I was coming home from work, trying to provide for this family, while you sit on your ass all day." "Keep your voice down," he hissed, glancing toward Haley's room. "You're being ridiculous. Lily and I are just friends." I laughed bitterly. "Friends who take secret vacations together?" "It's not like that," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I was going to tell you. It's a surprise trip for the kids. Lily's coming because her husband's out of town, and she didn't want to miss out. And you expect me to believe that?" Before he could answer, Haley appeared in the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Mommy? Daddy? Why are you fighting?" Mason's face softened as he turned to our daughter. "We're not fighting, Princess. Mommy's just tired from work. Why don't you go back to bed?" I watched as he scooped her up, whispering soothing words. My anger warred with the love I felt for my family. How could he do this to us? As Mason carried Haley back to her room, I sank onto the couch, my mind racing. I needed proof. I needed a plan. And most of all, I needed to protect my daughter from the storm that was about to hit our family. When Mason returned, his expression was cold. "We'll discuss this later. I'm going to bed." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As he disappeared upstairs, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. My eyes widened at the balance. Our savings account, the one I'd been carefully building for years, was nearly empty. My hands shook as I scrolled through the recent transactions. Airline tickets, resort bookings, all made by Mason. In that moment, I knew. My marriage was over, but I'd be damned if I let him walk away with everything I'd worked so hard for. I had to act fast. But how? I barely slept that night, tossing and turning as my mind raced with possibilities. By morning, I was exhausted but determined. I had to confront Mason, to make him see reason before it was too late. As I stumbled into the kitchen, I found Mason already there, casually sipping coffee like nothing was wrong. "Morning," he said, not even looking up from his phone. I took a deep breath. "Mason, we need to talk about last night." He sighed, finally meeting my gaze. Emma, I told you, it's not what you think. Can't you just trust me? Trust you? I laughed bitterly. How can I trust you when you've emptied our savings account? His eyes widened for a moment before he schooled his features. What are you talking about? I slammed my phone on the table. The banking app open. Don't play dumb. I saw the transactions, Mason. Airline tickets, resort bookings. Care to explain? He stood up, towering over me. You had no right to check our account. Our account? I shot back. The one I've been filling while you sit around unemployed? I've been looking for work, he shouted. No, you haven't, I said, my voice breaking. You've been too busy planning vacations with our neighbor. Just then, Haley padded into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Mommy? Daddy? Why are you yelling? Mason's demeanor changed instantly. He crouched down, smiling at our daughter. It's nothing, sweetheart. Mommy and Daddy are just having a grown-up talk. I bit my tongue, not wanting to upset Haley further. Honey, why don't you go get dressed? I'll make you some breakfast in a minute. As soon as Haley was out of earshot, Mason turned on me. This conversation is over, Emma. I'm taking Haley to school. We're not done here, Mason, I hissed. What about the trip? What about Lily? He grabbed his keys, avoiding my gaze. I told you it's a surprise for the kids. Drop it. Before I could respond, he was out the door with Haley in tow. I slumped against the counter, fighting back tears. How had my life come to this? The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went through the motions at work, my mind consumed with worry and anger. When I finally got home, I was met with an eerie silence. Haley? Mason? I called out, my voice echoing through the empty house. On the kitchen table, I found a hastily scrawled note. Emma, took Haley to Lily's. We're leaving for the airport. Don't try to stop us. It's better this way. Mason, my legs gave out, and I collapsed into a chair. They were gone. He had taken our daughter and left with that woman. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Mason. I'm sorry. I'll explain everything when we get back. Take care of yourself. Anger surged through me, replacing the shock. How dare he? How dare he use my money to fund his affair and take my daughter away? With shaking hands, I dialed my best friend Sarah. They're gone, I choked out when she answered. Mason took Haley and left with Lily. Oh, Emma, Sarah gasped. I'm coming over right now. Don't do anything rash. But as I hung up, a steely resolve settled over me. I was done being the victim. It was time to fight back. I marched to the computer and pulled up our bank statements, credit card bills, anything I could find. If Mason thought he could just walk away from this marriage with my money and my child, he had another thing coming. As I scrolled through the documents, a pattern emerged. Regular payments to a seedy motel on the outskirts of town, expensive gifts that had never made their way to me. It was all there in black and white, irrefutable evidence of Mason's betrayal. By the time Sarah arrived, I had a plan forming. I might not be able to stop them from taking this trip, but I could make damn sure they'd regret it when they returned. Emma? Sarah called, letting herself in. Where are you? I looked up from the computer, a grim smile on my face. In here, Sarah, and you're not going to believe what I've found. The days crawled by, each one a reminder of Mason's betrayal and Haley's absence. I threw myself into work, taking every shift I could get, desperate for any distraction. But the silence in the house was deafening. On the 5th day, I trudged up the driveway, my arms laden with groceries. As I fumbled for my keys, a deep voice startled me. Excuse me, are you Emma? I whirled around, nearly dropping my bags. A tall, rugged man stood on the sidewalk, his expression a mix of concern and uncertainty. Who's asking? I replied, my guard up. He stepped closer, hands raised placatingly. I'm Paul, Lily's husband. I think we need to talk. My heart raced. Lily's husband? Here? I nodded, gesturing towards the house. Come in. I have a feeling this isn't going to be a short conversation. Once inside, I busied myself making coffee, trying to calm my nerves. Paul sat at the kitchen table, his large frame seeming out of place in my cozy home. So, I said, setting a mug in front of him, I take it you're not part of the Cancun getaway? Paul's jaw clenched. No, I just got back from a 3-month offshore job, came home to an empty house and a note from Lily saying she took the kids on a last-minute vacation. I sank into the chair across from him, my suspicions confirmed. With my husband and daughter. Jesus, Paul muttered, running a hand through his hair. How long has this been going on? I only found out a few days ago, I admitted. But the bank statements, it's been months at least. Paul's fist came down on the table, making me jump. Damn it, I knew something was off, but I never thought. I know, I said softly. It's like a punch to the gut, isn't it? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the same pain and betrayal I'd been feeling reflected in his eyes. What do we do now? He asked. I took a deep breath. Well, I've been gathering evidence. Bank statements, credit card bills, hotel receipts. It's not pretty, but it's solid proof of their affair. Paul leaned forward, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. That's good. That's really good. We can use that. For what? I asked, suddenly wary. For leverage, he said, his voice low and intense, to make sure they don't walk away from this scot-free. I hesitated. Part of me wanted nothing more than to make Mason and Lily pay for what they'd done. But another part, the part that still loved my daughter more than anything, held back. I don't know, Paul. I don't want to do anything that might hurt Haley. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. Emma, they're the ones hurting our children. We're just trying to protect them. As I looked into Paul's determined eyes, something shifted inside me. The fear and uncertainty of the past few days gave way to a steely resolve. You're right, I said, squeezing his hand. We can't let them get away with this. Just then my phone buzzed, a text from Mason. Having a great time. Haley misses you. We'll be home in a week. I showed the message to Paul, my hands shaking with anger. A week, he mused. That gives us time to plan. I nodded, a grim smile spreading across my face. Yes, it does. And when they get back, they're going to wish they'd never left. As Paul and I bent our heads together, plotting our next move, I felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. This wasn't the life I'd imagined for myself, but I was done being a victim. It was time to take control. Okay, I said, pulling out a notebook. Let's start at the beginning. Tell me everything you know about Lily's schedule, her habits, anything that might be useful. As Paul began to speak, I couldn't shake the feeling that this unlikely alliance was about to change everything. For better or worse, there was no turning back now. Paul and I spent the next few days piecing together the sordid details of Mason and Lily's affair. Each new revelation felt like a knife twisting in my gut, but I forced myself to stay focused. We had work to do. Look at this, Paul said, sliding his phone across the table. Lily's been posting on Instagram. They're not even trying to hide it. I grabbed the phone, my hands shaking. There they were, Mason and Lily, lounging on a pristine beach. My daughter Haley was building a sandcastle in the background, oblivious to the betrayal surrounding her. That's it, I growled, tossing the phone back to Paul. We need to do more than just gather evidence. We need to hit them where it hurts. Paul leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. What do you have in mind? I took a deep breath. Mason's always been obsessed with his image, and Lily, well, you know how she loves to be the center of attention. So we destroy their reputations? Paul asked, a slow smile spreading across his face. I nodded. Exactly, but we have to be smart about it. We can't let them know we're behind it. We spent the next hour outlining our plan. It was devious, perhaps even cruel, but I couldn't find it in myself to care. They had brought this on themselves. Just as we were wrapping up, my phone buzzed. Another text from Mason. Haley wants to talk to you. Video chat in 5. My heart raced. I looked at Paul, panic rising in my throat. What do? I can't let Haley see you here. Paul squeezed my hand reassuringly. You've got this, Emma. Just act normal. I'll hide in the other room. As Paul slipped away, I composed myself and answered the video call. Haley's beaming face filled the screen, and for a moment all my anger melted away. Mommy, I miss you so much, she exclaimed. I miss you too, sweetheart, I said, fighting back tears. Are you having fun? Haley nodded enthusiastically. It's amazing. Daddy and Aunt Lily took us snorkeling today. I saw a sea turtle. My smile faltered at the mention of Lily, but I forced myself to keep it in place. That's wonderful, honey. I'm so glad you're enjoying yourself. When are you coming to join us, Mommy? Haley asked, her innocent question like a punch to the gut. Before I could answer, Mason's face appeared in the frame. Hey, Emma, Haley, why don't you go help Lily's kids build that sandcastle? Mommy and I need to talk. As Haley scampered off, Mason's expression turned serious. Look, Emma, I know you're upset. Upset? I hissed, keeping my voice low. You stole our savings, took our daughter, and ran off with the neighbor. Upset doesn't begin to cover it. Mason had the decency to look ashamed, I know it looks bad, but I can explain everything when we get back. I just need you to trust me. I laughed bitterly. Trust you? That ship has sailed, Mason. You'd better enjoy your little vacation because when you get back, all hell is going to break loose. His eyes widened. What's that supposed to mean? You'll see, I said coldly and ended the call. Paul emerged from the other room, his face grim. You okay? I wiped away a stray tear and nodded. I will be. But we need to step up our game. They're coming back in 3 days, and we need to be ready. What's our next move? Paul asked. I stood up, a newfound determination coursing through me. We're going to make some calls. It's time to let everyone know exactly who Mason and Lily really are. As I picked up my phone, I hesitated for a moment. Was I really ready to do this? To potentially destroy the father of my child? But then I remembered Haley's innocent question, the pain in her voice when she asked why I wasn't there. And I knew. There was no turning back now. Let's do this, I said to Paul, dialing the first number on our list. It was time to take back control of my life, no matter the cost. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of activity. Paul and I worked tirelessly, gathering every scrap of evidence we could find. Bank statements, credit card receipts, hotel bookings. It all painted a damning picture of Mason and Lily's affair. But it wasn't enough. We needed irrefutable proof, something that would leave no room for doubt or denial. We need pictures, I said to Paul as we sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by papers. Something that shows them together, in a compromising position. Paul nodded, his face grim. I might have an idea. My buddy works for a private investigation firm. He owes me a favor. An hour later, we were sitting across from Jake, Paul's friend, in a dingy office downtown. So, you want me to fly to Cancun and get some incriminating photos of your spouses? Jake asked, eyebrows raised. I leaned forward, my voice steady. Exactly. Whatever it takes. We need solid evidence. Jake whistled low. That's not going to be cheap, you know. Money's not an issue, I said, even as my stomach churned at the thought of spending more. Just get it done. As we left Jake's office, Paul turned to me. Are you sure about this, Emma? It's a lot of money. I squared my shoulders. I'm sure. Mason's already taken so much from me. What's a little more if it means getting justice? The next day dragged by agonizingly slow. I jumped every time my phone buzzed, hoping for news from Jake. By evening, I was a bundle of nerves. Just as I was about to call it a night, my phone lit up with a message from Jake. Check your email. You're going to want to see this. With shaking hands, I opened my laptop and clicked on the email. A series of high-resolution photos loaded, each one more damning than the last. Mason and Lily on the beach, holding hands, kissing by the pool. Sneaking into a hotel room together, while our children played obliviously nearby. I felt sick to my stomach, but also oddly relieved. Here was the proof I needed, laid out in pixels and bytes. I immediately called Paul. I got them, I said when he answered. The photos, they're bad, Paul. I'm coming over, he said, his voice tight with emotion. 20 minutes later, we sat side by side on my couch, scrolling through the images. Paul's face was a mask of pain and anger. I can't believe she would do this, he muttered. In front of our kids, no less. I placed a hand on his arm, offering what comfort I could. I know, it's awful, but now we have what we need to confront them. Paul nodded slowly, then turned to me with a determined look. Emma, I've been thinking, what if we don't just confront them? What if we go bigger? What do you mean? I asked, intrigued. These photos, the evidence we've gathered, it's enough to destroy them. Not just their marriages, but their reputations, their careers. We could take everything from them, just like they took from us. I hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing my mind. I don't know, Paul. That seems extreme. Is it? He pressed. After what they've done to us, to our children? Don't they deserve to lose everything? As I looked at the photos again, seeing Mason's arm around Lily, their carefree smiles while my daughter played alone in the background, something hardened inside me. You're right, I said, my voice cold. They do deserve it. But how do we do it? Paul's eyes gleamed with a mixture of pain and vindication. I have some ideas, but once we start this, Emma, there's no going back. Are you sure you're ready for that? I took a deep breath, thinking of Haley, of the life I'd worked so hard to build, of the trust that had been shattered. In that moment, I made my decision. I'm ready, I said, my voice steady. Let's make them pay. As Paul and I began to outline our plan, I felt a surge of adrenaline. The old Emma, the one who had let Mason walk all over her, was gone. In her place was a woman ready to fight for what was hers, no matter the cost. Little did I know, the true cost would be higher than I ever imagined. The day of reckoning arrived with a vengeance. I stood at the airport, my heart pounding as I watched families reunite all around me. Paul squeezed my hand reassuringly, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. "There they are," he muttered, nodding towards the arrival's gate. "I saw them before they saw us." Mason, tanned and relaxed, guiding Haley through the crowd. Lily, her arm linked with his, laughing at something he said. The sight of them together, so casual, so intimate, made my blood boil. Haley spotted me first. "Mommy," she cried, breaking away from Mason and running towards me. I scooped her up, holding her tight, breathing in her familiar scent. For a moment, everything else faded away. Then I heard Mason's voice. "Emma? What are you doing here? And who's this?" I set Haley down gently, steeling myself for what was to come. "Mason, Lily, this is Paul, Lily's husband." The color drained from their faces. Lily stumbled back, her eyes darting between Paul and me. What's going on?" "I think you know exactly what's going on," Paul growled, his fists clenched at his sides. Mason stepped forward, his charm kicking into overdrive. "Now, let's all calm down. We can discuss this like adults." "Discuss what, Mason?" I interrupted, my voice ice cold. "How you've been cheating on me? How you stole our savings for this little getaway?" Haley tugged at my sleeve, her eyes wide with confusion. "Mommy, why are you yelling at Daddy?" My heart broke for her, but I couldn't stop now. I turned to Lily's children, who were watching the scene unfold with growing alarm. "Why don't you three go sit over there for a minute? The grown-ups need to talk." Once the kids were out of earshot, I pulled out a thick envelope from my bag. "Here, Mason. Since you're so fond of surprises, I thought I'd bring you one." He took the envelope warily, his face paling as he realized what it contained. "Divorce papers? Emma, you can't be serious." "Oh, I'm dead serious," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "And that's not all. Keep looking." As Mason flipped through the pages, his eyes widened in horror. The bank statements, the credit card bills, the hotel receipts, all laid out in black and white. And then he got to the photos. How did you get these?" Lily whispered, peering over Mason's shoulder. Paul stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Did you really think you could flaunt your affair in public and not get caught?" Mason's face contorted with anger. "You had us followed? That's invasion of privacy." I laughed bitterly. "Privacy? You want to talk about privacy after what you've done? Mommy?" Haley's small voice cut through the tension. "What's wrong with Daddy's pictures?" I froze, suddenly aware of how public this confrontation had become. People were staring, whispering. This wasn't how I wanted Haley to find out. Mason seized the opportunity, crouching down to Haley's level. "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. Mommy and Daddy are just having a disagreement. Why don't we go home and—" "No," I said firmly, placing a hand on Haley's shoulder. "We're not going anywhere with you, Mason." His eyes flashed dangerously. "You can't keep my daughter from me." "Watch me," I hissed. "You gave up that right when you decided to play happy families with Lily." As if on cue, Lily burst into tears, drawing even more attention to our group. "Paul, please," she sobbed. "I can explain everything." Paul shook his head, his voice thick with emotion. "Save it, Lily. We're done." The situation was spiraling out of control. Security guards were approaching, drawn by the commotion. Haley was crying now, confused and frightened. And through it all, I could see Mason's mind working, trying to find a way out of this mess. "Emma," he said, his voice low and urgent, "let's talk about this at home, for Haley's sake." I hesitated, torn between my desire for justice and my need to protect my daughter. But as I looked at Mason's face, seeing not remorse but calculation, I knew what I had to do. "No," I said, my resolve hardening. "There's nothing left to talk about. You made your choice, Mason. Now you have to live with it." As I turned to leave, Haley's hand in mine and Paul at my side, I felt a strange mix of triumph and terror. The confrontation was over, but the real battle was just beginning. The days following the airport confrontation were a whirlwind of chaos. Mason and Lily were scrambling, their carefully constructed lies crumbling around them. I watched from a distance, a mix of satisfaction and dread churning in my stomach. Paul and I had agreed to push forward with our plan, no matter the cost. We'd come too far to back down now. "Are you ready for this?" Paul asked as we sat in my living room, our phones at the ready. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. As ready as I'll ever be. With trembling fingers, I dialed the first number on our list, Mason's parents. "Hello, Emma dear," my mother-in-law's voice chirped. "How are you?" "Not good, I'm afraid," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "There's something you need to know about Mason." Over the next hour, Paul and I made call after call. Mason's parents, his siblings, his boss, Lily's family, her friends, the PTA moms she'd always tried so hard to impress. We laid out the whole sordid tale, backed up by the evidence we'd gathered. By the time we finished, my throat was raw, and my ears were ringing with the shocked gasps and angry outbursts from the other end of the line. "It's done," Paul said, his face grim. "There's no going back now." As if on cue, my phone exploded with notifications, texts, voicemails, social media alerts. Mason and Lily's world was imploding, and we'd lit the fuse. I scrolled through the messages, my heart pounding. Friends expressing their shock and support. Family members offering to help with Haley. And then a text from Mason that made my blood run cold. "You've gone too far, Emma. You have no idea what you've done." Before I could process the threat, there was a pounding at the door. Paul and I exchanged alarmed glances. "Emma," Mason's voice boomed from outside. "Open the damn door!" I hesitated, fear gripping me. Paul squeezed my hand reassuringly. "We knew this might happen. Stay strong." Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. Mason burst in, his face contorted with rage. Lily trailed behind him, mascara streaking down her tear-stained cheeks. "How could you do this to us?" Mason snarled. "Do you have any idea what you've cost me?" "My job, my reputation, everything." I stood my ground, even as my knees threatened to buckle. "You did this to yourself, Mason, you and Lily." Lily stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Please, Emma, Paul, we can fix this. We can explain to everyone that it was all a misunderstanding." Paul scoffed. "A misunderstanding? Is that what you call stealing our money and running off together?" Mason's eyes darted around wildly. "Where's Haley? I want to see my daughter." "She's safe," I said firmly. "Away from all of this mess you've created." Something in Mason snapped. He lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "You can't keep her from me. I'm her father." Paul intervened, shoving Mason back. "Get your hands off her." The situation escalated quickly. Shouting, pushing, accusations flying. I watched in horror as the two men grappled, years of pent-up anger and betrayal exploding in a flurry of fists. "Stop it!" I screamed, trying to separate them. "This isn't solving anything." Suddenly, a small voice cut through the chaos. "Mommy? Daddy?" We all froze, turning to see Haley standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with fear. My heart shattered at the sight of her trembling lip. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, rushing to her side. "You shouldn't be seeing this." Mason stepped forward, his anger melting into shame. "Haley, I'm so sorry. Daddy didn't mean to." "Get out," I hissed, shielding Haley from him. "Both of you, just get out." As Mason and Lily slunk away, the weight of what we'd done crashed down on me. We'd won, but at what cost? The look of confusion and hurt on Haley's face was almost unbearable. Paul approached us cautiously. "Emma, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. As I held Haley close, trying to soothe her tears, I realized we'd reached a point of no return. The life I'd known was gone, shattered by betrayal and revenge. Now standing in the wreckage, I had to find a way to rebuild, not just for myself but for my daughter. The real challenge was only beginning. 6 months after that fateful confrontation, I stood outside the courthouse, my heart pounding as I waited for the judge's final decision. Paul squeezed my hand reassuringly, his presence a steady comfort through this tumultuous journey. "All rise," the bailiff called out. As the judge entered, I caught sight of Mason across the room. Gone was the confident, charming man I'd married. In his place stood a shell, hollow-eyed and defeated. "In the matter of Emma versus Mason," the judge began, her voice echoing through the silent courtroom, "this court grants the petition for divorce." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "given the evidence presented, full custody of Haley is awarded to Emma, with Mason granted supervised visitation." I gasped, tears springing to my eyes. We'd done it. Haley was safe. Mason's anguished cry cut through the air. "No, you can't take my daughter from me." As the bailiffs restrained him, I turned away, unable to watch his breakdown. Despite everything, a part of me still ached for the man I'd once loved. Outside, Paul was waiting with Lily's divorce papers in hand. "It's over," he said softly. "We won." But had we really? As we walked to the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that victory came at a steep price. Weeks passed, and slowly a new normal began to take shape. Haley and I moved into a cozy apartment, starting fresh. Paul and his kids became frequent visitors, our shared experience forging a deep bond. One evening, as we watched our children play in the park, Paul turned to me. "Emma, I've been thinking. We've been through so much together. Maybe there could be something more between us?" I looked at him, this man who'd stood by me through the darkest days of my life. There was warmth there, understanding. But was it love? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Mason. "Can we talk?" "For Haley's sake." My heart clenched. Despite everything, he was still Haley's father. "I have to go," I told Paul. "There's something I need to do." I met Mason at a quiet cafe, bracing myself for another confrontation. But the man who greeted me was different, humbled, contrite. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "for everything. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I want to be better, for Haley." As I listened to Mason's apology, something shifted inside me. The anger that had fueled me for so long began to ebb, replaced by a bittersweet acceptance. "It won't be easy," I said, "but for Haley's sake, we'll find a way to co-parent." Leaving the cafe, I felt lighter than I had in months. The revenge that had consumed me no longer seemed important. What mattered now was moving forward, building a life filled with love and trust, for myself and for Haley. I found Paul waiting at my apartment, concern etched on his face. "Is everything okay?" he asked. I smiled, truly smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. "It will be," I said. "Paul, about what you said earlier." He held up a hand, stopping me. "Emma, there's no rush. We've both been through so much. Let's just take it one day at a time, okay?" Relief and gratitude washed over me. "One day at a time," I agreed. I liked the sound of that. As we joined our children, their laughter filling the air, I realized that the journey wasn't over. There would be challenges ahead, wounds still healing. But I was no longer the woman who had been betrayed and broken. I was stronger now, wiser. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the park. I watched as Haley chased Paul's kids, her giggles echoing in the twilight. In that moment, I knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together. Not bound by revenge or bitterness, but by the love and resilience that had brought us through the storm. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to embrace it. One day at a time, we would build something beautiful from the ashes of what was lost. And in that, I found a peace I never thought possible. The letter trembled in my hands, its crisp edges cutting into my fingers like the words sliced through my heart. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My husband, Seth, the man I'd built a life with for the past decade, was secretly planning to sell our home, our sanctuary. "Mommy, can we have ice cream?" Emily's sweet voice broke through my shock. I quickly folded the letter and shoved it into my pocket. "Of course, sweetie. Let's go to the kitchen." I forced a smile, determined not to let my 5-year-old see the turmoil brewing inside me. As I scooped strawberry ice cream into a bowl for Emily, my mind raced. How long had Seth been planning this? Why hadn't he talked to me about it? The weight of betrayal settled on my shoulders like a heavy cloak. The front door opened and Seth's voice called out, "I'm home." Emily squealed with delight and ran to greet her father. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation ahead. "Hey, hon," Seth said, walking into the kitchen. He kissed my cheek, but I turned away, unable to reciprocate. "Everything okay?" I met his gaze, searching for any sign of guilt or remorse. "We need to talk, Seth. Emily, sweetie, why don't you go watch some cartoons?" Once our daughter was out of earshot, I pulled the letter from my pocket. "Care to explain this?" Seth's face paled as he recognized the real estate agent's letterhead. "Where did you get that?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is you've been making plans behind my back to sell our home." "Our home, Seth." He ran a hand through his hair, sighing heavily. "Carolyn, it's not what you think. I was just exploring our options." "Options?" I spat the word out. "Since when is selling the house we've built our life in an option? And why wouldn't you discuss this with me first?" Seth's expression hardened. "Look, we're struggling financially. You know that. I'm just trying to find a solution. By going behind my back, by making decisions that affect our entire family without even consulting me? My voice rose, and I struggled to keep it down for Emily's sake. You're overreacting, Seth said dismissively. It was just a preliminary inquiry, nothing set in stone. His cavalier attitude only fueled my anger. That's not the point, Seth. We're supposed to be partners. We're supposed to make these decisions together. Before Seth could respond, the doorbell rang. He looked relieved at the interruption. That'll be Mom and Dad. They're stopping by for dinner, remember? My heart sank. Of course, his parents would choose today of all days to visit. Perfect timing, I muttered. As Seth went to answer the door, I tried to compose myself. Walter and Dolores swept into the house, their presence immediately filling every corner. Carolyn, dear, Dolores said, air-kissing my cheeks. I hope you've prepared something nice for dinner. You know how Walter loves his pot roast. I bit back a retort. Actually, I was thinking of ordering in tonight. It's been a long day. Dolores clicked her tongue disapprovingly. Oh, nonsense. A good wife always has a home-cooked meal ready for her family. I caught Seth's eye, silently pleading for support, but he just shrugged and mouthed, It's fine. As I reluctantly headed to the kitchen to throw together a last-minute meal, I overheard Walter's booming voice. So, son, have you given any more thought to that business proposition I mentioned? It could really turn things around you financially. My hands froze on the refrigerator door. Another secret Seth had been keeping from me? I leaned closer, straining to hear Seth's response. Dad, I told you I'm handling things my way, Seth said, his voice low but firm. Your way? Walter scoffed. Your way has you living paycheck to paycheck. It's time to make some real changes, son. I'd heard enough. Slamming the refrigerator shut, I marched back into the living room. You know what? I'm not feeling well. I think we'll have to reschedule dinner. 4 pairs of eyes turned to me in surprise. Seth looked confused, Dolores offended, and Walter annoyed, but it was Emily's worried gaze that nearly broke my resolve. Mommy, are you okay? She asked, her little brow furrowed with concern. I knelt down and hugged her tight. I'm fine, sweetie. Just a little headache. Why don't you go play in your room for a bit? As Emily scampered off, I faced the others. I'm sorry, but I really need to lie down. Seth, could you see your parents out? Without waiting for a response, I turned and headed for our bedroom, my mind whirling with newfound determination. It was clear now, something had to change, and if Seth wouldn't do it, then I would have to take matters into my own hands. The doorbell's chime sent a wave of dread through me. I glanced at the clock, 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, right on schedule. I've got it, Seth called from the living room. I braced myself as Walter and Dolores breezed in, their presence filling our home like an invasive fog. It had been 3 days since I discovered Seth's secret plans to sell our house, and the tension between us was palpable. Carolyn, dear, Dolores cooed, her eyes scanning our living room critically. I see you haven't dusted the mantel this week. I bit back a retort. I've been busy with Emily's school projects. Walter harumphed. A woman's first duty is to her home, isn't that right, Seth? I watched my husband, silently pleading for him to defend me. Instead, he shrugged. Mom and Dad are just trying to help, Carolyn. The betrayal stung. I turned away, busying myself in the kitchen to hide my hurt. As I prepared coffee, I overheard their conversation. Son, have you given any more thought to that business opportunity I mentioned? Walter's voice carried a note of impatience. Dad, I told you. Now, Seth, Dolores interrupted. Your father knows best. You should listen to him. I nearly dropped the coffee pot. Another secret? How many more were there? Composing myself, I carried the tray into the living room. Here's the coffee. Emily will be home from school soon, so we can't visit long. Dolores waved her hand dismissively. Nonsense, we'll stay for dinner. I'm sure you have something prepared. My jaw clenched. Actually, Great, Walter boomed. I'm in the mood for your pot roast, Carolyn. I looked to Seth, hoping he'd intervene, but he was absorbed in his phone. Anger bubbled up inside me. I'm sorry, but I don't have anything prepared. We weren't expecting company. The room fell silent. Dolores's eyes narrowed. Well, I never. Seth, are you going to let your wife speak to us like that? Seth finally looked up, his expression a mix of confusion and annoyance. Carolyn, what's the problem? Can't you just whip something up? That was the last straw. No, Seth, I can't just whip something up. I have a life beyond catering to your parents' every whim. Walter stood up, his face reddening. Now see here, young lady. No, you see here, I snapped. This is my home, and I won't be bullied in it. Not by you, not by Dolores, and certainly not by my own husband. The room erupted into chaos. Dolores gasped dramatically, Walter bellowed about respect, and Seth just sat there looking bewildered. Suddenly a small voice cut through the noise. Mommy? Daddy? Why is everyone yelling? We all turned to see Emily standing in the doorway, her backpack clutched tightly to her chest. The sight of her frightened face doused my anger instantly. It's okay, sweetie, I said, moving to embrace her. Grandma and Grandpa were just leaving. Seth finally found his voice. Mom, Dad, I think it's best if you go. We'll talk later. As Walter and Dolores huffed their way out the door, I held Emily close, stroking her hair. Seth approached us cautiously. Carolyn, what's gotten into you? He asked, his voice low. I met his gaze, my resolve strengthening. We need to talk, Seth, but not now, not in front of Emily. He nodded, a flicker of worry crossing his face. Good, I thought. He should be worried. Later that night, after tucking Emily into bed, I found Seth in his study. The letter from the real estate agent lay on his desk. Were you ever going to tell me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Seth sighed, running a hand through his hair. I was waiting for the right time. We're struggling, Carolyn. The house is too expensive. I thought... You thought wrong, I interrupted. This isn't just your decision to make. And what about this business opportunity your father mentioned? Another secret? His silence was all the answer I needed. I felt something inside me break. I can't do this anymore, Seth. The secrets, the disrespect, your parents' constant interference. Something has to change. Seth stood up, reaching for me. Carolyn, please, we can work this out. I stepped back, shaking my head. Can we? Because right now I'm not so sure. As I turned to leave the room, Seth called out, What are you saying? I paused at the doorway, my hand on the knob. I'm saying that if things don't change, and fast, you might just get your wish to sell this house. But I won't be here when you do. With that, I walked out, alone with the weight of his secrets and the consequences of his actions. As I climbed into our cold, empty bed, I realized that for the first time in years, I felt something other than resignation. I felt hope. The morning light filtered through the curtains, illuminating the empty space beside me. Seth had taken to sleeping in the guest room, a silent acknowledgement of the growing chasm between us. I sighed, steeling myself for another day of tension and unspoken words. As I made my way downstairs, I heard Emily's laughter mingling with Seth's voice. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps things were improving. But as I rounded the corner into the kitchen, reality came crashing back. Mommy, Emily exclaimed, her face lighting up. Daddy says we're going to move to a bigger house with a pool. I froze, my eyes locking with Seth's. His expression was a mix of guilt and defiance. I thought we agreed to wait, I said, my voice low and controlled. Seth shrugged, avoiding my gaze. She overheard me on the phone. I had to explain. On the phone? I repeated, my anger rising. So you're still pursuing this without talking to me? Carolyn, please, Seth said, gesturing towards Emily. Not now. I bit my tongue, forcing a smile for our daughter's sake. Emily, sweetie, why don't you go get dressed for school? I need to talk to Daddy. Once Emily was out of earshot, I turned on Seth. How dare you? We're supposed to be a team, Seth. You can't just make unilateral decisions about our family's future. What team? Seth snapped back. You've been cold and distant for weeks. Someone has to make decisions around here. Cold and distant? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I've been trying to process the fact that my husband has been lying to me and planning major life changes behind my back. Seth's face hardened. I'm doing what's best for this family. If you can't see that, maybe you're not as committed to us as you claim to be. His words hit me like a physical blow. Not committed? I've given everything to this family, Seth. Everything. And you have the audacity to question my commitment? Our argument was interrupted by a small sob. We turned to see Emily standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Please stop fighting, she whimpered. Guilt washed over me as I moved to comfort her. Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry. Mommy and Daddy just had a disagreement. Everything's okay. But as I held my crying daughter, I knew everything was far from okay. The look Seth gave me as he left for work was cold and distant, a far cry from the loving husband I once knew. Throughout the day, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Emily was quieter than usual, her usual exuberance dimmed by the morning's events. As I tucked her into bed that night, she looked up at me with worried eyes. "Mommy, are you and Daddy going to get a divorce like Jenny's parents?" My heart shattered. "Oh, honey," I said, struggling to find the right words. "Mommy and Daddy are just going through a rough patch. We both love you very much, and that will never change." But as I closed Emily's door, I couldn't help but wonder if I was lying to her. The thought of divorce had been creeping into my mind more and more lately, but hearing it from my daughter's lips made it feel terrifyingly real. I made my way to Seth's study, determined to have a real conversation, but as I approached, I heard his hushed voice through the door. "I know, Dad. I'm working on it. Carolyn's being difficult, but I'll convince her. The house will be on the market by the end of the month, I promise." My world tilted on its axis. All this time, I'd hoped that Seth would come around, that we could work things out. But now I realized the truth. He had no intention of considering my feelings or opinions. He was going to sell our home, with or without my consent. In that moment, something inside me hardened. I'd spent years compromising, years putting everyone else's needs before my own. But no more. If Seth wanted a fight, he was going to get one. As I turned away from the study door, my mind was already racing with plans. It was time to take control of my own destiny, for my sake and for Emily's. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of determination ignite within me. Let Seth make his plans. I would make mine. And when the dust settled, he'd realize just how badly he'd underestimated me. The phone rang. Its cheerful tone, a stark contrast to the tension that had settled over our home. I answered, grateful for the distraction. "Carolyn, sweetheart?" My mother's voice filled me with warmth. "Your father and I have been thinking. We'd love to come visit next week. It's been too long since we've seen our granddaughter." For the first time in weeks, a genuine smile spread across my face. "Oh, Mom, that would be wonderful. Emily would love to see you both." As I hung up, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe my parents' visit would bring some much-needed light into our increasingly gloomy household. But my optimism was short-lived. "Who was that?" Seth's voice, cold and suspicious, came from behind me. I turned to face him. "It was my mom. They want to visit next week." Seth's expression darkened. "Absolutely not. We can't have visitors right now. I told you we need to get the house ready for sale." The spark of hope inside me flared into anger. "You mean the sale you're planning behind my back? The one I explicitly told you I don't want?" "Carolyn, be reasonable," Seth said, his tone patronizing. "We've been over this. It's the best decision for our family." "No," I shot back. "It's the best decision for you. And as for my parents visiting, they're coming. End of discussion." Seth's face flushed with anger. "I said no, Carolyn. This is my house too, and I have a say in who comes here." "Your house?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What happened to our house, Seth? And why is it okay for your parents to barge in whenever they want, but mine can't visit?" "That's different," Seth sputtered. "My parents are trying to help us," I laughed bitterly. "Help us? By criticizing everything I do? By undermining me at every turn? Some help, that is." Seth's voice rose. "At least they care about our financial future. Your parents have never lifted a finger to help us. Because we've never asked them to," I shouted back. "They respect our independence, unlike your parents, who treat us like children." Our argument was interrupted by Emily's small voice. "Daddy, why are you yelling at Mommy?" We both turned to see our daughter standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with fear. Seth's expression softened immediately. "It's nothing, sweetheart," he said, reaching for her. "Mommy and Daddy are just having a grown-up discussion." But Emily backed away from him, running to me instead. As I held her close, I saw something flicker in Seth's eyes. Hurt? Jealousy? Whatever it was quickly replaced by cold anger. "Fine," he spat. "Have your parents visit, but don't expect me to be here. I'll stay at my parents' place until they're gone." As he stormed out of the room, I felt a strange mix of relief and despair wash over me. How had we come to this? The man I married, the one who had promised to stand by me through thick and thin, was now treating me like an enemy. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind raced. I thought about Seth's ultimatum, about the house, about Emily's frightened face. Something had to give. I couldn't keep living like this, walking on eggshells in my own home, watching my daughter grow more anxious by the day. I reached for my phone, hesitating for just a moment before dialing. "Mom?" I said when she answered, my voice shaky. "About your visit next week, I was wondering, would it be okay if Emily and I came to stay with you instead?" There was a pause, and I could almost hear the concern in my mother's silence. "Of course, sweetheart," she finally said. "Is everything all right?" I took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "No, Mom, it's not, but I think it's time I did something about it." As I hung up, I felt a strange mix of fear and determination. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. Things were about to change. And this time, I would be the one calling the shots. The morning sun filtered through the curtains as I sat at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. The house was quiet, Seth having left early for work without a word. Emily was still asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in our once happy home. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew I had to do. It was time to confront Seth, to lay all our cards on the table. No more secrets, no more silent treatments. We needed to talk about the house, about our future, about everything. As if on cue, I heard the front door open. Seth walked in, his suit wrinkled and his eyes tired. He froze when he saw me sitting there. "Seth," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need to talk." He sighed, loosening his tie. "Carolyn, I'm exhausted. Can this wait?" "No," I replied firmly. "It can't. Sit down, please." Reluctantly, he took a seat across from me. I pushed a folder towards him, watching as confusion flickered across his face. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it," I said. As he flipped through the pages, his expression changed from confusion to shock, then to anger. Inside were printouts of all his secret correspondence with the real estate agent, bank statements showing large withdrawals I knew nothing about, and a draft contract for selling our house. "Where did you get these?" Seth demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "That doesn't matter," I replied. "What matters is that you've been lying to me, Seth, making huge decisions about our life without even consulting me." "Why?" Seth's face hardened. "You wouldn't understand. I'm trying to secure our future, Carolyn. This house is dragging us down financially." "And you didn't think I deserved to be part of that decision?" I shot back. "This is my home too, Seth. Our daughter's home. You can't just decide to sell it on a whim." "It's not a whim," Seth shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "We're drowning in debt, Carolyn. The business isn't doing well, and I've been trying to keep us afloat, but you're too busy playing house to see the reality of our situation." His words hit me like a slap. "Playing house? Is that what you think I do all day? Take care of our daughter, manage our home, support you in every way I can." Seth's expression softened slightly. "That's not what I meant. I didn't want to worry you with all this." "So instead you lied to me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Made me feel like I was going crazy for suspecting something was wrong?" "I was protecting you," Seth insisted. "No," I said, shaking my head. "You were protecting yourself. From having to face the truth with me, from having to admit that things aren't perfect." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. Finally, I spoke again. "I've decided to go stay with my parents for a while," I said quietly. "I'm taking Emily with me." Seth's head snapped up. "What? You can't do that." "I can, and I will," I replied, my resolve strengthening. "We need some time apart, Seth, to figure out what we really want, and if this marriage is still what's best for both of us." "Carolyn, please," Seth pleaded, reaching for my hand. "We can work this out. I'll cancel the sale. We'll figure something else out." I pulled my hand away. "It's too late for that, Seth. The trust is gone. I need time to think, to breathe." As if on cue, we heard Emily's footsteps on the stairs. Seth's eyes met mine, panic clear in his gaze. "Don't tell her," he whispered urgently. "Not yet." I nodded, forcing a smile as our daughter entered the kitchen. But as I watched Seth interact with Emily, pretending everything was fine, I felt something inside me harden. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about respect, trust, and the kind of life I wanted for myself and my daughter. Later that night, as I packed our bags in secret, I made a decision. This break with my parents wouldn't just be about thinking things over. It would be about planning my next move, about taking control of my life in a way I hadn't done in years. Seth had made his choices. Now it was time for me to make mine. The suitcases sat by the door, a silent testament to my resolve. Emily bounced excitedly nearby, chattering about seeing her grandparents. I forced a smile, my stomach churning with a mix of anticipation and dread. "Are you sure about this, Carolyn?" Seth's voice, tinged with desperation, came from behind me. I turned to face him, steeling myself against the pain in his eyes. "We need this, Seth. I need this." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "It's just for 3 days," I said, more to convince myself than him. "We'll talk when I get back." As we drove away, Emily waving goodbye from the back seat, I caught a glimpse of Seth in the rearview mirror. He stood on the porch, looking lost and alone. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Then I remembered the lies, the secrets, the dismissals of my feelings. I pressed the gas pedal harder. The drive to my parents' lakeside cabin was quiet, Emily having dozed off shortly after we left. My mind raced with thoughts of the past few months, of the life I thought I had versus the reality I was facing. We arrived just as the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the tranquil lake. My parents greeted us warmly, enveloping Emily in hugs and showering her with attention. As I watched them, a lump formed in my throat. This was what family should feel like: warm, supportive, loving. That night, after Emily was tucked in, I sat on the porch with my parents. The weight of everything came crashing down, and I found myself pouring out the whole story. Seth's secrets, the house, the constant belittling from his parents. "Oh, sweetheart," my mother said, pulling me into a hug. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" "I was ashamed," I admitted, tears streaming down my face. "I thought I could fix it." My father's voice was gruff with emotion. "You have nothing to be ashamed of, Carolyn. That man has a lot to answer for." As we talked late into the night, a plan began to form in my mind. It was terrifying, but also exhilarating. For the first time in years, I felt like I was taking control of my life. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of activity. While Emily enjoyed the lake with her grandparents, I made phone calls to lawyers, to financial advisors, to old friends who might have job leads. With each call, my resolve strengthened. On the last night of our stay, as Emily slept peacefully, I sat by the lake, my phone clutched in my hand. I had drafted and redrafted the message a dozen times. Finally, with a deep breath, I hit send. "Seth, we need to talk when I get back. Things can't go on like this. I've made some decisions about our future." The response was almost immediate. "What do you mean? Carolyn, what's going on?" I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone and looked out over the calm water. The peace I felt in that moment was in stark contrast to the storm I knew was coming. As dawn broke on our last day, I began packing our bags. Emily was still asleep, blissfully unaware of the turmoil in her parents' lives. I envied her innocence. Just as I zipped up the last suitcase, my phone buzzed. It was Seth. "I'm coming to get you and Emily. We need to sort this out now." Panic rose in my throat. This wasn't part of the plan. I wasn't ready to face him yet. Not here. Not now. "Carolyn?" My mother's voice called from downstairs. "There's someone here to see you." My heart pounding, I made my way down the stairs, and there, standing in the living room, looking disheveled and desperate, was Seth. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I knew. There was no going back. The life I had known, the marriage I had clung to, was over. The only question now was, what would rise from its ashes? As Seth opened his mouth to speak, I raised my hand to stop him. "No, Seth," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "This time, you're going to listen to me." The tension in the room was palpable as Seth and I faced each other. My parents stood nearby, their protective presence giving me strength. "Carolyn, what's going on?" Seth demanded, his voice a mix of anger and desperation. "You can't just take our daughter and disappear like this." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I didn't disappear, Seth. I told you I needed time to think, and I have." "Think about what?" he asked, his eyes darting between me and my parents. "About us, about our future, about what's best for Emily." I paused, gathering my courage. "I want a separation, Seth." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Seth's face paled, then flushed with anger. "A separation? Are you out of your mind? We have a life together, a family." "Do we?" I countered, my voice stronger than I felt. "Because lately, it feels like we're just two strangers living in the same house, keeping secrets and making unilateral decisions." Seth's eyes narrowed. This is about the house, isn't it? I told you I was trying to protect you. No, Seth, this is about trust, about respect, about partnership. I pulled out a folder from my bag, the same one I had shown him days ago. I've been doing some digging of my own. The business isn't just struggling, is it? You're on the verge of bankruptcy. Seth's face crumpled. How did you? It doesn't matter. I cut him off. What matters is that you lied to me. Again and again, you made huge decisions that affect our entire family without even consulting me. I was trying to fix things, Seth shouted, his composure cracking. I didn't want you to worry. That wasn't your choice to make, I shouted back, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. We're supposed to be partners, Seth, equals, but you've been treating me like a child, like I can't handle the truth. Seth's anger deflated, replaced by a look of defeat. What do you want from me, Carolyn? I want honesty. I want respect. I want to be treated like an equal partner in this marriage. I took a deep breath, but right now I don't think you're capable of giving me that. Just then, a small voice interrupted us. Mommy? Daddy? Emily stood at the foot of the stairs, her eyes wide with fear. Seth and I exchanged a look of guilt. We had been so caught up in our argument, we'd forgotten about our daughter. I knelt down, opening my arms to Emily. It's okay, sweetie. Mommy and Daddy were just talking. As I held our daughter, I looked up at Seth. His face was a mask of pain and regret. For a moment, I felt a flicker of doubt. Could we fix this? Should we try for Emily's sake? But then I remembered the lies, the secrets, the constant dismissal of my feelings. I thought about the future I wanted for Emily, one where she saw her mother as strong, respected, valued. Seth, I said softly, I think you should go. We'll talk more when we get back home. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it, nodding slowly. As he turned to leave, he paused at the door. I'm sorry, Carolyn, for everything. I hope it's not too late. As the door closed behind him, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief wash over me. My mother placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Are you okay, sweetheart? She asked. I looked down at Emily, still nestled in my arms, then back at my parents. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about ending something. It was about beginning something new. Something better. No, I replied honestly, but I will be. As I stood there, surrounded by the love and support of my family, I felt a newfound strength coursing through me. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years, I felt ready to face it. Not as Seth's wife, not as Emily's mother, but as Carolyn. Strong, independent, and finally, truly free. The familiar streets of our neighborhood felt foreign as we drove past, Emily chattering excitedly in the back seat about seeing her toys again. My parents followed in their car, a convoy of support I never knew I needed until now. As we pulled into the driveway, my heart raced. Seth wasn't there. Good. This would be easier without him present. Mommy, why aren't we going inside? Emily asked as I unbuckled her. I knelt down, meeting her curious gaze. Sweetie, we're going to stay with Grandma and Grandpa for a while. It's going to be an adventure, okay? Her little brow furrowed. But what about Daddy? The question I'd been dreading. I swallowed hard. Daddy needs some time alone right now, but he loves you very much, and you'll see him soon. As my parents helped gather our essentials, I slipped inside the house one last time. The silence was deafening. I moved through the rooms, memories flooding back, both good and bad. In our bedroom, I placed the letter I'd written on Seth's pillow. My hand lingered on the paper, a finality to the action that made my chest tighten. Back outside, I locked the door, feeling the weight of the key in my palm. This house, once my dream, now felt like a prison I was finally escaping. At my parents' house, as Emily explored her new temporary room, my mother pulled me aside. Carolyn, are you sure about this? I nodded, surprising myself with my certainty. I am, Mom. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. The next few days were a whirlwind. I filed for separation, met with lawyers, and started job hunting. Seth called and texted incessantly, alternating between anger, pleading, and promises to change. I held firm, only communicating about Emily's needs. A week after our return, as I was putting Emily to bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Seth. I'm outside your parents' house. We need to talk. My heart raced, but I steeled myself. This confrontation was inevitable. Seth looked haggard as I met him on the porch. Carolyn, please, he began. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. Come home. I shook my head. Seth, this isn't just about the house or the lies. It's about years of feeling undervalued, dismissed, and disrespected. I can't go back to that. I'll change, he promised desperately. I'll do whatever it takes. That's just it, Seth, I said softly. You shouldn't have to change who you are, and I shouldn't have to change who I've become. We've grown apart, and it's time we accept that. Tears filled his eyes. What about Emily? We'll co-parent. She needs both of us, Seth, but she needs us happy and whole, not miserable and resentful. As Seth's shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt a wave of compassion. Despite everything, I did still care for him. Seth, I said gently, I hope you find happiness. I really do, but I need to find mine too. After he left, I sat on the porch swing, gazing at the stars. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it. The next morning, as Emily and I ate breakfast, my phone pinged with a job offer. A position at a local community center, helping families in need. As I read the email, tears of joy sprang to my eyes. Mommy, why are you crying? Emily asked, concern in her voice. I smiled, wiping my eyes. Happy tears, sweetie. Mommy just got some very good news. As I hugged my daughter close, I realized that this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. A chance to show Emily what strength, independence, and self-respect truly meant. A chance to rebuild my life on my own terms. Later, as I watched Emily play in the backyard with my parents, I felt a surge of gratitude. For their support, for my own resilience, and for the journey ahead. The path wouldn't be easy, but I was no longer afraid. I was Carolyn, mother, daughter, and now, architect of my own destiny. With a deep breath, I stepped into the sunshine, ready to embrace whatever the future held. The best chapters of my life, I realized, were yet to be written. I stared at the clock, willing the hands to move faster. Another dinner with Tom's mother loomed, and my stomach churned at the thought. The office bustled around me, a welcome distraction from the evening ahead. Nancy, you've got that look again, Jen said, peering over her computer screen. Dinner with the mother-in-law? I nodded, forcing a smile. How'd you guess? You always get that deer-in-headlights expression on Barbara days. Jen's sympathy was palpable. Want to grab a quick drink before you head home? Might take the edge off. The temptation was strong, but I shook my head. Thanks, but I better not. Tom would notice, and then I'd never hear the end of it. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. Tom's face flashed on the screen, and I answered with a sigh. Hey, honey, you're on your way home, right? Mom's expecting us at 7 sharp. I glanced at the clock again. 5:45. I'm leaving now, Tom. I'll be there in plenty of time. Great. Oh, and Nancy? Mom mentioned she's got some big news. Try to act excited, okay? The line went dead before I could respond. I gathered my things, said goodbye to Jen, and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of my reflection. At 40, I looked good, better than I had in my 20s, if I'm honest. But there was a tightness around my eyes, a weariness that no amount of concealer could hide. The drive home was a blur of traffic and anxiety. I pulled into our driveway at 6:30, giving myself just enough time to change and touch up my makeup. Tom was waiting in the living room, keys in hand. There you are, he said, giving me a perfunctory kiss. Ready to go? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We drove to Barbara's in silence, the tension thick between us. As we pulled up to her immaculate colonial, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. Barbara answered the door with her usual false warmth. There's my boy, she cooed, embracing Tom. She turned to me, her smile never reaching her eyes. Nancy, dear, so glad you could make it. We followed her into the dining room, where the table was set with her best china. Tom's brother George and his wife Sarah were already seated, looking as uncomfortable as I felt. Well, Barbara said, clapping her hands together, shall we eat? I'm just dying to share my news. Throughout the meal, Barbara dominated the conversation, peppering us with not-so-subtle digs about our childless state and my career. I caught Sarah's eye across the table, recognizing the same trapped expression I wore. Finally, as Barbara cleared the dessert plates, she paused dramatically. Now for my announcement. I've been thinking long and hard about this, and I've decided it's time for a change. We all leaned in, curiosity momentarily overriding our discomfort. I'm selling this big old house, Barbara continued. It's just too much for me to manage on my own, and I've found the perfect solution. My heart sank. I knew what was coming before she said it. I'm going to move in with one of you. We'll be one big happy family again. Isn't that wonderful? The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at Tham, praying he wouldn't volunteer us, but the eager expression on his face told me everything I needed to know. Mom, that's a great idea, he said, beaming. Nancy and I would love to have you stay with us, wouldn't we, honey? All eyes turned to me. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. The room started to spin, and I realized with horror that I was about to faint. As darkness crept in at the edges of my vision, one thought echoed in my mind. This can't be happening. This can't be my life. I woke with a start, my heart racing. The events of last night's dinner flooded back, and I groaned. Fainting at Barbara's announcement wasn't exactly my finest moment. Tham stirred beside me. You okay, honey? You gave us quite a scare last night. I sat up, rubbing my temples. I'm fine, just overwhelmed, I guess. He patted my hand. I know it's a big change, but having Mom here will be great. You'll see. I bit back a retort. How could he be so blind to his mother's true nature? I need to get ready for work, I said, slipping out of bed. At the office, I couldn't focus. Barbara's words echoed in my head. We'll be one big happy family again. The thought made me shudder. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Can we talk? Lunch today? I replied immediately. Absolutely. 12:30 at Café Margot? Sarah was already there when I arrived, looking as frazzled as I felt. We ordered quickly, then leaned in close. Nancy, I can't believe this is happening, Sarah whispered. George is thrilled about Barbara moving in with one of us. He keeps saying how helpful she'll be. I snorted. Helpful? More like suffocating. Tom's the same way. It's like they're both under some sort of spell. Sarah nodded vigorously. Exactly. And Barbara? Did you see how she looked at us when she made her announcement? Like a cat that caught the canary. I noticed, I said grimly. Sarah, we need to do something. We can't let her take over our lives like this. But what can we do? The boys won't listen to reason where their mother's concerned. I sighed, pushing my salad around. I don't know, but there has to be a way to make them see her for who she really is. Just then my phone buzzed again. It was Tham. Mom's coming over for dinner tonight. Says she wants to discuss living arrangements. Be home by 6, okay? I showed Sarah the message. Her face fell. Oh, Nancy, I'm so sorry. Good luck tonight. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I left work early, determined to have a moment alone with Tham before Barbara arrived. But when I got home, I found them already in the living room, heads bent over floor plans. Nancy, Barbara trilled. So glad you're here. We're just discussing where to put my things. I froze in the doorway. Your things? Tham beamed. Mom's decided to move in with us? Isn't it great? The room started to spin again. I gripped the doorframe, willing myself not to faint. When did this happen? Barbara waved a dismissive hand. Oh, Tham and I have been discussing it all day. We didn't want to bother you at work, dear. I looked at Tham, betrayal burning in my chest. He had the grace to look sheepish. I was going to tell you tonight, honey. I just got excited. I see, I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. And when is this move supposed to happen? Barbara clapped her hands. This weekend. No time like the present, I always say. I nodded woodenly, then turned on my heel. Excuse me, I muttered. I need some air. I stumbled out to the backyard, gulping in deep breaths. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a nightmare. But as I stood there, staring blindly at our neatly trimmed lawn, a memory surfaced. Something Sarah had said once about Barbara's past, a rumor she'd heard from an old family friend. Something about cruelty, about secrets buried deep. In that moment, a seed of an idea took root. If Barbara was going to invade my home, my life, then I was going to find out exactly who she really was. And if there were skeletons in her closet, I was going to drag them into the light. I straightened my shoulders and headed back inside. Let Barbara think she'd won. I had work to do. The next morning, I woke early, my mind racing with plans. I needed to talk to Sarah, to compare notes and strategize. As I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed with a text from her. Can you meet? It's urgent. We agreed to meet at a small park near my office during lunch. When I arrived, Sarah was already there, pacing nervously. Nancy, thank God you're here, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know how much more I can take. I guided her to a bench. What happened? Sarah's eyes welled with tears. It's Barbara. She's been relentless. Ever since the dinner, she's been calling nonstop, showing up unannounced, and George just lets her in like it's normal. I felt a surge of anger. What's she doing when she comes over? Criticizing everything. My cooking, my cleaning, even the way I dress. Yesterday, she brought over a bunch of her old clothes and told me I should dress more appropriately for my age. I'm only 38. I squeezed her hand. That's awful, Sarah. I'm so sorry. She wiped her eyes. That's not even the worst part. Last night, I overheard her talking to George. She was saying how disappointed she was that we haven't given her grandchildren yet, as if it's any of her business. My blood ran cold. I knew all too well the pain of that particular criticism. What did George say? Sarah's face crumpled. He agreed with her. Said maybe we should try harder. Nancy, I can't have children. We've known this for years. George knows this, but suddenly it's like he's forgotten everything we've been through. I pulled her into a hug, my mind whirling. This was worse than I'd imagined. Barbara wasn't just meddling. She was actively trying to drive a wedge between us and our husbands. Sarah, I said slowly, remember that rumor you mentioned once about Barbara's past? She nodded, sniffling. Something about her being cruel Tom and George's father, right? But it was just gossip. Maybe, I said. But what if it wasn't? What if there's more to Barbara's story than we know? Sarah's eyes widened. You think we should look into it? I think we need to, for our own sanity if nothing else. Do you remember who told you about it? She thought for a moment. It was Mrs. Jennings, I think, Tom and George's old neighbor. She moved to Florida a few years ago. I nodded, a plan forming. Can you get her contact information? I think it's time we had a chat with Mrs. Jennings. As we parted ways, I felt a glimmer of hope. We had a lead, a potential chink in Barbara's armor. But when I got home that evening, my newfound optimism evaporated. Barbara was there, presiding over my kitchen like she already owned it. Nancy, dear, she called. I hope you don't mind, but I've taken the liberty of rearranging your cabinets. Much more efficient this way. I stood frozen in the doorway, taking in the chaos. My carefully organized kitchen was unrecognizable. Tom appeared behind Barbara, beaming. Isn't Mom great? He said. She's been here all day, helping out. I forced a smile. How thoughtful. Barbara bustled over, patting my cheek condescendingly. Now don't you worry about dinner. I've prepared a lovely pot roast. Tom tells me you're not much of a cook, but I'll be happy to teach you. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Tom, oblivious to my distress, was already setting the table. As we sat down to eat, Barbara dominated the conversation, peppering her monologue with backhanded compliments and not-so-subtle digs. I pushed my food around, barely tasting it. Then Barbara dropped her bombshell. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, I've invited a lovely young woman from my church to dinner tomorrow night. She's new in town and looking for work. I thought you might be able to help her out, Nancy. After all, you must have some pull at that little publishing house of yours. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. Excuse me, Barbara smiled innocently. Well, dear, I just thought it might be nice for you to mentor someone. Give you a taste of what it's like to nurture a young person, since you and Tom haven't been blessed with children of your own. The room fell silent. I looked at Tom, waiting for him to defend me, but he just smiled weakly and changed the subject. In that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about Barbara moving in. This was war. The next morning, I woke with a sense of dread. Barbara's dinner invitation to the young woman from her church loomed over me like a dark cloud. I knew it was just another of her manipulations, but I couldn't see a way out of it. As I got ready for work, Tom hovered nearby, his face etched with concern. Nancy, are you okay? You've been so quiet since last night. I turned to face him, struggling to keep my voice steady. Tom, don't you see what your mother's doing? She's taking over our lives, criticizing everything about me, and now this dinner. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. She's just trying to help, honey. Maybe if you gave her a chance. A chance? I cut him off, my voice rising. Tom, she rearranged our entire kitchen without asking. She's constantly putting me down, and now she's trying to push some random girl into my workplace. How is any of that helping? Tom's face hardened. Mom's going through a tough time, Nancy. She needs us. I thought you'd be more understanding. I felt like I'd been slapped. Understanding? What about understanding me, Tom? Your wife? He shook his head, grabbing his keys. I can't deal with this right now. I'll see you tonight. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone with my anger and frustration. At work, I couldn't focus. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Any luck with Mrs. Jennings?" I'd completely forgotten. "Working on it," I replied. "How are you holding up?" Her response was immediate. "Barely. Barbara's here again, says she's tidying up while I'm at work. Help." My heart sank. I needed to act fast. During my lunch break, I finally tracked down Mrs. Jennings' number and made the call. "Hello?" a wavering voice answered. "Mrs. Jennings, this is Nancy, Tom's wife. I hope you remember me." There was a pause. "Oh yes, dear. How are you? How's Barbara?" I took a deep breath. "Actually, Mrs. Jennings, that's why I'm calling. I was hoping you could tell me more about Barbara's past, specifically about her relationship with Tom and George's father." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Mrs. Jennings spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Oh my, I never thought. Well, I suppose it's time someone knew the truth." For the next 20 minutes, Mrs. Jennings painted a picture of Barbara that made my blood run cold. Stories of manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional abuse. How she'd driven her husband to an early grave, all while maintaining her image as the perfect wife and mother. But the worst part, Mrs. Jennings said, her voice breaking, was how she turned those boys against their father. Made them believe he was the problem. Even now, I don't think they know the truth. I thanked her, my mind reeling. As I hung up, I knew I had a decision to make. This information could change everything, but using it meant potentially destroying Tom's relationship with his mother forever. The rest of the day passed in a blur. When I got home, the house was filled with the aroma of cooking and the sound of laughter. I walked into the kitchen to find Barbara at the stove, Tom setting the table, and a young woman, presumably Barbara's church friend, sitting at the counter. "Nancy, dear." Barbara trilled, "Come meet Melissa. She's so excited to hear about your work." I plastered on a smile, shaking Melissa's hand. She seemed nice enough, but I couldn't help resenting her presence in my home. As we sat down to eat, Barbara dominated the conversation, singing Melissa's praises and not so subtly hinting at job opportunities. Tom nodded along, seemingly oblivious to my discomfort. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well. Please excuse me." I fled to our bedroom, closing the door behind me. As I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking, I knew I had reached a breaking point. I couldn't live like this anymore. I pulled out my phone and texted Sarah, "We need to talk. Tomorrow. It's time we did something about Barbara." As I hit send, I felt a mix of fear and determination. Whatever happened next, I knew there was no going back. The next morning, I met Sarah at a small cafe far from our usual haunts. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she clutched her coffee mug like a lifeline. "I can't do this anymore, Nancy," she whispered. "Last night, Barbara, she went too far." I leaned in, my heart racing. What happened? Sarah's voice shook as she recounted the previous evening. Barbara had shown up unannounced, ostensibly to help with dinner, but it quickly devolved into a barrage of criticism and thinly veiled insults. "She kept going on about how I'm letting George down by not having children," Sarah said, tears welling up. "Then she started talking about adoption, saying it might be our only option, given my inadequacies." My blood boiled. "That's horrible, Sarah. What did George say?" She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "He just sat there, didn't say a word. It's like he's become a different person since Barbara started this whole moving in nonsense." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Sarah, there's something you need to know. I spoke with Mrs. Jennings yesterday." As I relayed what I'd learned about Barbara's past, Sarah's face went from shock to disbelief to anger. "How could she?" Sarah whispered. "All these years, making us feel like we were the problem. And the boys, they have no idea, do they?" I shook my head. "I don't think so. Mrs. Jennings said Barbara was very good at manipulating the narrative." Sarah's eyes hardened with resolve. "We have to tell them. They need to know the truth about their mother." Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Tom. "Where are you?" "Mom's here. Says she has big news." I showed Sarah the message, my stomach churning. "We should go. Whatever Barbara's planning, we need to face it head on." When we arrived at my house, Barbara was holding court in the living room, Tom and George flanking her like loyal subjects. Her eyes narrowed when she saw us enter together. Well, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. How nice of you both to join us. I was just telling the boys my wonderful news. I braced myself, catching Sarah's eye. Whatever was coming, we'd face it together. Barbara stood, spreading her arms wide. I've decided to sell my house and move in here permanently. Isn't it marvelous? We'll all be one big, happy family. The room spun. I gripped the doorframe for support, barely registering Tom's excited response or George's enthusiastic nod. Sarah spoke first, her voice trembling. No. The room fell silent. Barbara's smile faltered. I beg your pardon? Sarah straightened her shoulders, years of pent-up frustration finally breaking free. I said no, Barbara. You're not moving in here. You're not moving in with us. This has to stop. Barbara's face darkened. How dare you speak to me that way? After everything I've done for this family? Done for this family? I found my voice, anger propelling me forward. You mean like manipulating your sons? Criticizing and belittling your daughters-in-law? Trying to control every aspect of our lives? Tom stepped forward, his face a mask of confusion. Nancy, what are you talking about? Mom's just trying to help. I turned to him, my heart breaking. No, Tom, she's not. She never has been. There's so much you don't know about your mother. Barbara's eyes flashed dangerously. That's enough. I won't stand here and be insulted in my own son's home. It's not your home, Sarah shouted, years of pain pouring out. It's ours, and we're done letting you dictate our lives. The room erupted into chaos. Tom and George shouted defenses of their mother, while Barbara hurled insults and threats. Sarah stood her ground, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, watching the family I'd married into tear itself apart, I made a decision. I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't watch Barbara destroy our lives piece by piece. I stepped into the center of the room, my voice cutting through the noise. Stop, all of you. Just stop. As all eyes turned to me, I took a deep breath. This was it, the point of no return. Tom, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I love you, but I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving. The stunned silence that followed was deafening. As I turned to walk out the door, I caught Sarah's eye. She nodded, a silent understanding passing between us. Whatever happened next, we would face it together. And Barbara's reign of terror was finally coming to an end. I sat in my hastily rented motel room, staring at the phone in my hand. It had been 3 days since I walked out, and the silence from Tom was deafening. Sarah had texted nonstop, her messages a mix of support and panic. She was staying with a friend, unable to face George after our confrontation with Barbara. A knock at the door startled me. I opened it cautiously, half expecting to see Tom. Instead, I found Sarah, her eyes red-rimmed and wild. I need to tell you something, she said, pushing past me into the room. It's about George and Barbara. My heart raced as Sarah paced the small room, wringing her hands. What is it? What's happened? She took a shaky breath. I went home to get some clothes. George wasn't there, but I found emails between him and some woman named Claire. My stomach dropped. Sarah, are you saying? He's having an affair, she choked out. Has been for months, but that's not even the worst part. I sat on the bed, bracing myself. What could be worse than that? Sarah's face crumpled. Barbara knew. She's been encouraging it. There were messages from her to George telling him he deserves someone who can give him a family. She even introduced them. The room spun. I felt sick. Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry. She collapsed next to me, sobs racking her body. How could they do this? How could Barbara betray me like this? I thought she at least respected the sanctity of marriage, even if she hated me. As I held Sarah, my mind raced. This wasn't just cruel, it was diabolical. Barbara had systematically destroyed her daughter-in-law's marriage, all while maintaining her facade of family values. We have to do something, I said, anger rising in my chest. We can't let her get away with this. Sarah looked up, her eyes suddenly hard. You're right. No more being passive. No more letting her control our lives. It's time we fought back. We spent the next few hours planning, fueled by righteous anger and cheap motel coffee. We would confront George and Barbara, armed with evidence of their betrayal. But first we needed more information. I called Mrs. Jennings again, pressing for more details about Barbara's past. What she told me made my blood run cold. It wasn't just emotional abuse with her husband, Mrs. Jennings said, her voice quavering. There were rumors, dark rumors about accidents, about money disappearing. Nothing was ever proven, but... I thanked her and hung up. my mind reeling. I turned to Sarah, who was scrolling through George's emails on her tablet. "Sarah," I said slowly, "I think we need to dig deeper into Barbara's finances and her past." She looked up, her expression grim. "You think there's more?" I nodded. "Much more. And I think it's time Tom and George learn the truth about their mother." Just then, both our phones buzzed simultaneously. It was a group text from Barbara. "Family dinner tomorrow night, 7 p.m. sharp. Attendance is mandatory." Sarah and I exchanged looks. This was it, our chance to confront Barbara and expose her lies. As we prepared to leave the motel, gathering our evidence and steeling our nerves, my phone rang. It was Tom. "Nancy," he said, his voice strained, "we need to talk. Before dinner tomorrow. There's something you need to know." My heart pounded. "What is it, Tom?" He hesitated. "It's about Mom and Dad. I found something in her attic. Something that changes everything." As I hung up, I looked at Sarah. Her face mirrored the mix of fear and determination I felt. "Whatever happens tomorrow," I said, "we're in this together." She nodded, squaring her shoulders. "Together. It's time Barbara faced the consequences of her actions." As we walked out of the motel, I felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. Tomorrow night, everything would change, and Barbara's carefully constructed world of lies and manipulation would finally come crashing down. My hands shook as I pulled into Tom's driveway. The weight of what we were about to do pressed down on me like a physical force. Sarah sat beside me, clutching a folder full of evidence against Barbara and George. "Are you ready for this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded grimly. "It's now or never." We walked to the front door, each step feeling like a mile. Tom answered, his face drawn and pale. "Nancy, Sarah, come in. We need to talk before Mom and George arrive." In the living room, Tom paced nervously. "I found something in Mom's attic," he began, his voice trembling. "Old letters, financial documents. Nancy, I think my father's death wasn't an accident." The room spun. I steadied myself against the wall. "What are you saying, Tom?" He ran a hand through his hair. "The letters suggest Mom was having an affair, and there were large insurance payouts after Dad died. It's all circumstantial, but—" Sarah gasped. "Oh my God, Nancy, the rumors Mrs. Jennings mentioned." I turned to Tom. "There's more you need to know. About your mother, about George." For the next hour, we laid out everything we'd discovered. George's affair, Barbara's manipulation, the years of emotional abuse. Tom listened in stunned silence, his face growing paler with each revelation. Just as we finished, the front door opened. Barbara's voice rang out, falsely cheerful. "Hello, darlings. I hope everyone's ready for a lovely family dinner." She entered the living room, George trailing behind her. Her smile faltered as she took in our grim faces. "What's going on here?" she demanded. I stood, my heart pounding. "We know everything, Barbara, about Dad's death, about George's affair, about all of it." Barbara's face hardened. "I don't know what you think you know, but—" "Save it," Sarah interrupted, her voice shaking with anger. She turned to George. How could you betray me like this?" George paled. "Sarah, I can explain." Barbara's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal. "Now, let's all calm down. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding." "No more lies," Tom shouted, startling us all. He held up the letters he'd found. "Tell us the truth, Mom. About Dad, about everything." For a moment, Barbara's mask slipped. I saw a flash of something cold and calculating in her eyes. Then, to my horror, she began to cry. "Oh, my poor boys," she sobbed. "I've only ever wanted what's best for you. Everything I've done out of love." I watched in disbelief as Tom and George's faces softened. They were falling for it, just like they always had. "No," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "No more manipulation, Barbara. It's over." I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over a number. "I've been in touch with the police. They're very interested in reopening the investigation into your husband's death. One call, and they'll be here with a warrant." The room fell silent. Barbara's tears dried up instantly, replaced by a look of pure hatred. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I said, meeting her gaze. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, Barbara lunged for my phone. In the chaos that followed, accusations flew. George admitted to the affair, Tom revealed what he'd found, and Sarah unleashed years of pent-up anger. Through it all, I stood my ground, phone in hand, ready to make good on my threat. As the shouting reached a fever pitch, a sharp pain lanced through my abdomen. I doubled over, gasping. "Nancy?" Sarah's worried voice seemed to come from far away. "Nancy, what's wrong?" The room spun, faces blurring together. As darkness crept in at the edges of my vision, I heard Barbara's voice, cold and clear. "Well, isn't this convenient? Just like her to ruin a family dinner with her dramatics." Then everything went black. I awoke to the sterile white of a hospital room, the steady beep of monitors filling the air. Sarah sat beside me, her face etched with worry. "Nancy, thank God you're awake," she said, squeezing my hand. "You had an acute stress reaction. The doctor said it was brought on by extreme emotional distress." As the fog cleared from my mind, the events of the family dinner came rushing back. "Barbara," I croaked. "What happened?" Sarah's eyes hardened. "After you collapsed, everything changed. Tom called an ambulance, and in the chaos, Barbara tried to destroy the evidence. But George finally stood up to her. He confessed everything, the affair, Barbara's manipulation, all of it." My heart raced. "And Tom?" "He's been here every day," Sarah said softly. "He's devastated, Nancy, about everything. He wants to talk to you when you're ready." Over the next few days, as I regained my strength, the full story emerged. The police had reopened the investigation into Tom and George's father's death. Barbara was facing serious charges, not just for her potential involvement in her husband's death, but for years of financial fraud and manipulation. Tom came to see me, his eyes red-rimmed and haunted. "I'm so sorry, Nancy," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have seen it, should have believed you. Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at him. This man I'd loved for so long, now finally free from his mother's influence. "It's not about forgiveness, Tom," I said gently. "It's about moving forward. We've all been victims of Barbara's manipulation. The question is, what do we do now?" As I recovered, Sarah and I spent long hours talking, planning our future. We both knew we couldn't go back to our old lives, to marriages built on lies and manipulation. The day I was discharged, Tom and George were waiting in the hospital lobby. The four of us sat in the hospital garden, the weight of years of deception hanging heavy in the air. "We've made a decision," I said, looking at Sarah for confirmation. She nodded, her eyes clear and determined. "We're leaving," Sarah continued. "Not just Barbara, but all of it. We need a fresh start, away from the toxicity and pain." Tom and George looked stricken, but not surprised. "We understand," George said quietly. "We failed you both. We let our mother poison everything good in our lives." Tom reached for my hand, but I gently pulled away. "I hope you both find peace," I said, "and I hope you can rebuild your relationship as brothers without Barbara's influence. But Sarah and we need to find our own way now." As Sarah and I walked out of the hospital, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Epilogue. 1 year later. I stood on the balcony of our new apartment, watching the sunset over the city. Sarah called from inside, "Nancy, dinner's ready." As we sat down to eat, I marveled at how much had changed. We'd moved across the country, started new jobs, and begun the process of healing. Our divorces were finalized, and while the pain of the past still lingered, it no longer defined us. "I got a letter from Tom today," Sarah said, passing me the salad. "Barbara's trial is set for next month. He and George are testifying against her." I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. "How do you feel about that?" Sarah considered for a moment. "Relieved, I think. It's finally ending, and we're not there to be caught in the crossfire." I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "We made it, Sarah. We're free." As we clinked our glasses in a toast to our new life, I felt a surge of gratitude. For Sarah's friendship, for our shared strength, and for the courage we found to break free from Barbara's web of lies and control. The future stretched out before us, full of possibility, and for the first time in years, I was excited to see what it held.